Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Valheim fan chat, where I chat or interview or otherwise engage with another person in the Valheim community or just somebody who really loves Valheim. Today, I'm here with Atlas, who's been working on the MMO version of the adventure map that you know about from 9byte and Dakar. And we're going to get into Atlas's history, what Valheim means to him, how he got started with Valheim, the kind of same introductory stuff that I've been doing with other people in these discussions. I used to do a lot of these videos, but I would edit the video, and that meant that I would sit on it for weeks, and ultimately I couldn't talk to as many people as I wanted. So that's why we switched over to this live stream format, because then I can just live stream and I don't have to edit the video, I don't have to sit on it. It happens when it happens, you know what I mean? So, welcome Atlas. How's it going? You want to say hello?
Yep, I'm doing pretty well. It's definitely my first time being on somebody else's live stream. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, isn't it? I've gotten used to it now, but definitely, I didn't really visit other people's servers that much before, but now that I've been doing these live streams, like they seem to be really beneficial, both for myself and for other people. We learn a lot more about Valheim in the community, and it helps also with networking. You know what I mean? Because sometimes, like, I found out later a certain player wants a certain kind of experience, and I know somebody who runs a server that does that exact thing they want. You know what I mean? So, why don't we start?
Yeah, it's
Go
always sorry, I'll interrupt there for a little bit, but it's always interesting to see what kind of servers people create. Because there's always, the basic let's play, let's, have two, three, four people kind of servers. There's tens of thousands of those, but sometimes you'll find somebody who's like, I want like a Grayling Horde survival tower defense map, and you're like, boy, do I have the perfect server for you.
on. Yeah, super specific. So, why don't we start from the beginning? Usually, I like to ask people about their experiences with gaming before they started playing Valheim. So, what kind of games were you playing? Were you playing games at all? Why don't we start there?
Um, let's see. My first introduction to gaming was, I'm pretty old. I'm 32, coming up here
Oh,
pretty
you're a
soon.
young Valheimer. What do you mean? Valheimers are old. Where the average Valheim player is like 42 or something. You're a young Spriggan like me. I know,
I'm getting
we're
up
fresh
there in
chickens.
years. But I want to say it was some kind of fighting game over at a friend's house. And then I ended up moving on to RuneScape of all things.
Oh, I love
Um,
RuneScape.
yeah, I love RuneScape too. And then back and forth. Let me see. I think I played the browser games. I played Neopets. I played Adventure Quest. I played, a bunch of different games like that. And then for a while there, I would say middle school, high school, I didn't really do much gaming outside of RuneScape. RuneScape being RuneScape, it's kind of hard to quit. Um, and then I
You've
ended up,
played
I think
very
with
similar games to me. That's funny.
Yeah, I think one of my first experiences with gaming was I actually had a girlfriend at the time who had an Xbox 360, and I would always game when I went over to other people's houses. I never found a reason to like save money and buy my own game console. I was more interested in like going out to eat, when I was younger. But I ended up having a girlfriend who liked playing Call of Duty. And when she would play Call of Duty, I would play with her when I was over at her house. And then finally, one day, I decided to buy an Xbox 360. And the cool thing at the time about Xbox 360 was certain games didn't require a subscription or certain map modes didn't require a subscription. So much like on PC, you could connect with people for free through the Xbox Live servers. One of the games like that is Dark Souls 1. But I ended up getting into Call of Duty again, and then I got pretty bored of it pretty quickly. If you remember Call of Duty from the earlier days, um, it was either you were hyper competitive, or you were there to make videos. Kind of, there was no real in between. Well, you know what? I guess the community for Call of Duty hasn't really changed that much.
Well, there's a lot more Call of
um,
Duty games now. That's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Yeah, that's the game hasn't changed that much, and the people who plays the game haven't changed that much. So you know what? I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. Um, but yeah, so then I got into Battlefield. I think the first game I picked up was Battlefield 3, and I bought literally every single DLC for that. Ended up becoming pretty high ranked. I was number one in the world for all platforms for the SG 553, which is a particular gun, which isn't, necessarily an achievement. I ended up helping
That means you like the game, though.
run.
You played it a lot.
Yeah. I definitely played it a lot. Um, I ended up helping run a gaming community before Discord was a thing. It was called IDS, Insane Death Squad. It was started by I want to say a guy in the UK. We had the forums actually may still be there. You can still find traces of it. Like, that's how big it was. We had like 10,000 members at one point, active forums, community. And we had some small esports that we competed in around the world. And then kind of just one day it died. And then Minecraft came out and I got into Minecraft. And that started my love of the, survival genre.
Sandbox.
Yeah, the survival sandbox genre. And about let me see, it's been 5 years now, 6 years now. About 6 years ago, I decided to buy a new laptop. And it wasn't necessarily super powerful, but I was
Yeah,
interested in a particular
laptop is
game.
awesome.
Yep. I was interested in a particular game that I saw on, oh God, what's his name? General Sam's YouTube. And he does like Tarkov and stuff like that now. But I originally found him because he did Skyrim playthroughs. And I was looking for something that I could play Skyrim again. But the reason I bought the laptop was a game called Kenshi. And Kenshi is this, I don't even know how to explain it other than to say it is the worst, best game you will ever play. It is made by one Brit, over the course of 13 years. And you can kind of tell that some of the mechanics aren't completely thought out well, but also you can see the spirit of somebody who loves the world they've created. The game is a buggy fucking mess. It's absolutely super unperformant. You could have the best NASA PC in the world and you're still like, man, I'm getting 60 FPS instead of, 400. But it was made by one guy on and off for 13 years. And it's a squad based sword punk kind of tower defense, kind of exploration, kind of open world sandbox where you can be whoever you want to be within the limitations of the game. Like, you can be a thief and just rob everybody. You can be a slaver who, captures slaves. And this game was so weird and so unique. And I ended up falling in love with it. And then I ended up becoming community lead for a project called Genesis for the game. And the idea behind that project was take all of the best ideas of what the community wants and remake the game so that it's more coherent, but that it has more weight and depth behind it. And drama happened. COVID happened, and what ended up happening was the two actual designers of the mod ended up leaving the project. One of them was a British man, and if you know anything about British housing and council and stuff like that, his house ended up getting flooded during COVID. Council basically made him live on the street with his pregnant wife for like 8 months. So they were house hopping for a while. So, no fault to him. The other guy just ghosted, right? And he ended up running away with access to all of the accounts people were trying to donate to us. And so I ended up taking over the project, taking over the community, and that community is, given the nature of the game, it has some pretty toxic people in it. And I ended up, ironically, pushing aside the project and kind of, because one of the core content cycles on my YouTube channel is Kenshi. I talk about mods. I like to review mods. I like to, I see a cool mod that I think somebody else would be interested in. I love to cover those kinds of things. I love getting suggestions from people and stuff like that. So one of the things that I did was I changed, the core of my content idea. I moved to YouTube first, and then the game mod second, and that allowed me to, focus on growing my YouTube channel. And I was able to get back into the love of modding. And then I happened to be on Twitter one day, and a friend of mine, a content creator that I've followed for a long time, Gathalion, he was a big Destiny streamer, with like Dado Plays Destiny and T-Rex and Professor Broman, back when Destiny 1 was a big thing, and then Destiny 2. He was just tweeting out how much he loved Valheim. And I don't know if you know the modder Hugo the Dwarf, but Hugo the Dwarf actually plays Kenshi. And because he plays Kenshi, I knew him through that. And so I saw Gathalion talking about he had an idea for a project, and basically what he wanted to do was to create an MMO type server with like very particular mods, and he wants a very particular style. And so I was like, okay, I'll look for a team. So I reached out to Gathalion and ended up connecting him with Hugo the Dwarf, who connected me with some other modders.
Can I stop you for a second? So
yeah.
I recognize that name. So at this point, let me just try and summarize, because you've covered a lot of ground, so I want to make sure I'm absorbing what you're saying. Basically, I've heard about Kenshi. I've never played that game, but I have noticed how on YouTube there are a lot of video essays about people who like love that game, and they always talk about how like it's got shitty parts, but it doesn't matter, basically. So it's funny hearing you like say something very similar to what I've heard. It definitely makes me want to check it out at some point, because I like learning about games that have that different impact. And when people like really love a game, like genuinely, they're very willing to overlook its flaws, right? And I find that when people aren't willing to overlook the flaws of a game, oftentimes we can criticize the communities, but usually it's because the game itself isn't really hitting right. You know what I mean? Because when people actually love a game, they'll overlook its flaws, right? So basically, go on.
I'll say this about Kenshi. If you play Kenshi, and I'm going to say this to anybody who watches the video, right? I think it's worth it. It goes on sale quite a lot. There's like 50% sales, 75% sales. I think it's worth it if you buy it. I think it's worth it if you buy it, you play it once, you hate it, and then kind of you watch a YouTube video and you get curious, right? Kenshi is not the average kind of game where like you pick up Valheim and you either like it or you don't, right? You pick up Kenshi and there's something about it. You can hate everything about the game. You will never not want to criticize the game. Why does it work like this? Why does it do it like this? Why does it have this feature? And yet, for some reason, it tickles something at the back of your brain and you can't stop playing it. And then before you know it, you've got 1,000 hours in the game.
Yeah, that's cool. So, okay. So you started the modding and Valheim stuff in other games, and before, sorry, the modding and YouTube stuff. And before Valheim enters the picture, you're practicing modding and on YouTube. Is that right?
Yeah, more or less. I would say the majority of the content, you can actually go through and scroll through my YouTube channel. The majority of my content at the time was me modding Kenshi. I was actually streaming on Twitch and then uploading it to YouTube. So I would say that was the bulk of my content for a while. Um, and I don't know if you've ever seen anybody program or mod or anything like that. It's not super engaging content for the vast majority of people.
Oh, trust me, my friend. You basically described my whole channel in a nutshell. It's like I make
Yeah,
content
yeah,
for server managers of Valheim. It's like there's like
yeah.
8 of them. So I feel you. I feel you. But I will say it definitely stuck out. Like most of the time when I find people, they made a couple of videos on YouTube or something. You've made a lot of videos. Like you've uploaded stuff for a while. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you. So can you now talk to us a bit more about? Okay, you mentioned a project, and I heard a name that I recognized, although I don't know why I didn't recognize the name. But it was something Gathalion. Is that right?
Yeah, Gathalion.
Can you tell us who
Gathalion.
is that? Because I don't know.
Uh,
Maybe people in the
so
audience don't know.
so Gathalion is a variety streamer on Twitch. He also has a YouTube channel, but he mostly puts
Ah,
his content on Twitch. But he was really big. If you watched Destiny, if you followed anything about the video game Destiny and its like rise to fame during Destiny 1, you knew the name Gathalion even if you didn't watch him. Like that's how big of a community he had built. He was there with Dado Plays, T Rex, Professor Broman, like all of the big name Gathalion or all the big name Destiny streamers. Like he was there with them, and so. I actually used to watch him quite a lot. But
okay, so
he had
he's a well-known or relatively well-known, I don't know the specifics,
yeah
Twitch streamer in the Destiny scene, or just overall?
yeah
Like,
yeah
how
yeah
would you? Okay,
he
okay,
he did variety games, but I would say like his rise, his claim to fame was Destiny was what built his community.
okay, cool.
But
So
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna tell you to go on.
Yeah, so let me see. So I'm modding Kenshi. I've followed Gathalion on Twitter for a while. And one of the things that he was talking about was how much he loves Valheim. Bear in mind, the only thing that I know about Valheim is that I have friends who make mods for Valheim. I've never played it. I've never watched a video on it. I had zero experience with Valheim, and for whatever reason, something in my brain made me respond to this singular tweet, and I was like, I know a bunch of modders. I'll get a team together. And so not even 30 minutes later, I'm buying Valheim for the first time ever, jumping into game to try and learn the mechanics because in about 2 days, I was going to start helping manage Cathalion's MMO server.
Yeah,
And so his idea was he wanted to have they were playing with Valheim Plus originally, and then by recommendation of the modders, one of them being Vapek or Vapak, or however you say his name, but one of the he makes epic loot, or rather he maintains epic loot.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I recognize the name from Thunderstore.
yeah. So by recommendation of him, he basically took charge of the team. And then we had, it was a super fun MMO server. We had a bunch of different runs of it to kind of test out networking and how many people we could have on. And at one point we had, during peak hours, we had, I think, 60 something people, if I remember correctly, in one location fighting like multi-level, multi-starred bosses. And so then what ended up happening was what ended up happening was oh god, I wish I remembered his name. I know that it's in both 9bytes and Dakar's video, but I think his name is like basically a random user reached out to us while playing on the MMO server and was like, hey,
Oh, I didn't kill him in time. Sorry.
it's all good.
Go on. The user reached out.
Yeah, so a random user reached out, and what ended up happening was he was like, hey, there's a couple other creators out there who would like to do the same thing you're doing. And so that's how we got in contact with 9byte and Dakar. And so for about a month, kind of behind the scenes, it was chaos. Vapek didn't really know what he wanted to do. Gathalion had different ideas. And so that's kind of when I stepped up and took lead role in the project. And I was like, okay, let's get all the ideas out there before we present the idea to Gathalion. And so basically what ended up happening was we were going to create the adventure map and then make it MMO kind of stylized. And then as we were working, Vapek ended up having family issues, so he had to leave. One of the other modders, who I'm not going to name, I don't want to cause any drama, but one of the other modders basically walked away from the project, no context whatsoever. So again, now I'm basically solo, in charge of a project I know absolutely nothing about. I don't know anything about modding Valheim. I don't know anything about server managing Valheim. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like pretty much anything. Like I'm barely 2 months into my Valheim journey. And I
start. Like
yeah.
That's very interesting.
I stumble along a little mod called Infinity Hammer. And that started me in my world building journey. And so talking with Dakar, talking with 9byte, turns out, surprise, they use Infinity Hammer for a lot of things in their builds. So I get closer with Dakar, I get closer with 9byte. We're talking about ideas for this adventure map, how I want to do an MMO build. And then, of course, if you know anything about Jer, you know that Infinity Hammer is not the limit of the mods that he makes. So then comes EWP. Yeah. Then comes, you have EWP. And Continents Plus, I think, is one of the mods that he manages. So what ends up happening is I get this little bug inside me where I'm like, I want to make a completely custom map and redesign everything. And so that was actually the point where the project, the Valheim adventure map, forked.
Yeah.
So the idea was to take nine cart. I'm combining their names.
I like that. Yeah.
To take 9bytes and Dakar's general build ideas. So for instance, they have like the Meadows boss arena and the Meadows town. The idea was to take that and then expand it into an MMO setting. So when you go into the Meadows town, you have an actual build, you have an actual NPCs, you have quests and givers and shops and stuff like that that you can interact with. And then you go into the Black Forest town and it's completely different. And then on top of that, you also have these really cool, really unique boss arenas. But unlike in normal Valheim or on the adventure map, right? The idea is to have like modded mechanics in there, right? So I want, Ecthier to go around, and when he gets to half health, unlike in a EWP mod, you don't, like change the code behind it and then summon in a separate Ecthier. What ends up happening is
there's model or anything.
Yeah, so with with mods and stuff like that, I can, for instance, have Ecthier do the call of the forest, and all of a sudden, he's calling in hordes of animals that want to kill you. Or I can have, the elder summon, graylings or something like that, or spawn grayling nests. And so there was this idea where the max people I want to be able to play on this map is about 4 people, right? Or the minimum people, sorry. So if you're trying to play this solo, like, it should be nearly impossible unless you have unless you grind it out. The idea is that you build this with party people in mind. So you'll download the mod. Yeah, you'll download the mod pack and you'll download the map and you'll use the mod pack on the map, and that will give you all of the features, everything that you're looking for, pre-built in the map. And so it creates this idea where we would like it to be an MMO setting, but with different competing factions and PvP areas and again, kind of harkening back to RuneScape. Like, if you go through a particular part of the map, it's a PvP area, but you have to go through that particular part of the map into ensure that you get to like the Black Forest City or something like that. You can skip the Black Forest City, but if you do, then you won't get all the quests in the Black Forest City, which may help you level up more, which may help you get gear. And so there's also, there's a million one things that I want to do with the map. But so long story short,
let me slow you down for a moment and just make sure I understand, and also give those listening a moment to catch up. So basically, the adventure map project started and you're all working together, and then there's a fork. And Dakar and 9byte work on a version that's basically exclusively what you can do in one world file.
Yeah.
Whereas you're, at that point, working on a version that is that world file, but with mods and other things to create a new experience that is played more like an MMO server. So like, you're designing it more to be a server that groups of people, like at least 4 people, maybe more, maybe 10, or I don't know, like 20 or something, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Whereas theirs is more focused on like single player or 2 or 3 of your friends together. Does that sound accurate? And hello, Crumbs, by the way. Welcome. TZ and Ping and Crumbs. I didn't say hello earlier, so.
Their general idea is that you should be able to play with 1 to 4 players through a I don't want to say narrated, but basically a linear progression path. And my idea was to take Valheim's progression and split it up to the biomes, but you need multiple people to get past the biomes, because the idea basically being like you have an MMO progression style, right? So you still have the
like the
vanilla
quests and the elite quests
in
an MMO. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
But one of the things that I'm focusing in on is that you're actually locked to every biome. So until you beat Ekthir, you know, you can go to the Black Forest, you can go to the mountain, you can go to the Mistlands if you want, but you can't use anything from those regions. And so that pushes people to naturally want to group up with other players because the boss is hard. Because the boss is hard, you know, it keeps people from progressing too fast and stuff like that. So instead of it being you know, like if you join a Valheim server, and your friend has already, say, beaten the Elder, you can just go to them and put on the gear. So one of the mods actually limits this. You specifically, as a character, have to beat Ekthir, and you can't, you know, just sit out of the fight. You actually actively have to be contributing damage to the fight. Otherwise, it doesn't count as part of your kill. So yeah, the idea basically was, to summarize, we all had the same plans, the same idea, but the adventure map will be finished first. And then what will happen is the MMO map will come out. I do have some test builds and I've had people tested them, but I'm not particularly fond of, which I guess is something else we can get into. I'm not particularly fond of how the modding community works. It is very sequestered and secluded, and there's a lot of division and you know, kind of just, I'm better than you because I do something a different way. And it becomes very annoying, especially when people put limitations in their mods, specifically for the reason that they don't want their mod to work with another mod. And it's not so much about the end user experience, but more so about the modder thinking that everything that they do is right. And again, I'm not going to call any particular people out, because it's, you know, it would just cause drama, but
No,
it's kind of one of those things where
about these things though. I definitely I completely agree with you. I'm not in the same situation. I don't know who you're talking about, and I don't have anyone in particular in mind. But I can definitely say that as a person who visits people's servers and tries to encourage people to work together in these things, it's very clear to me that people struggle to work together. Like they absolutely struggle. They're often mired in dysfunction. If you look in Discord channels, it's like sometimes new people join a Discord group for some kind of mod situation. I'm not saying any particular Discord group. This happens even in Valheim World editing. I've seen this happen a couple times. And I make sure to call it out because I hate it. But basically, like someone who's like older and new and confused will ask a basic question and then like get attacked for like not reading the docs or not doing something else. And it's like you just got to be accepting of people, you know? We're all idiots, right? We need help.
Yeah.
So I feel you.
You don't know what you don't know until you know better.
Yeah, and there's also something about the social element of it, you know, like the difference between just being alone and reading documentation. Like for me with EWP, now I can read the docs and it's really awesome and it's really useful. But back when I first started, I didn't know what the fuck it all meant. It was so too complicated. So people would be like, read the docs, and I'd be like, I did. How do I know which one is what I want? Like, what do these words mean? What is a swap? Why is spawn different than spawns? I don't get it. Like, you know, there's hundreds of things. But why don't we start walking down this, and then you can tell me
legitimately, if it wasn't for 9byte and Dakar, I probably wouldn't have any idea what any of this meant.
Yeah, Dakar's helped me so much. He's taught me loads. This path you're walking on was originally a prototype. It like builds itself to the edge of the world. Yeah. And Dakar, he gave me like a prototype, and that led to a whole bunch of stuff. So Dakar has been very influential in my endeavors. But I would love to learn more about what you're just getting into. Like, again, you don't need to name any specifics or anything. Yeah. What is it that you think could be different about the modding community? And like,
so one of the things is kind of just, let me see. So we have Jotun, right? Which is like a core library for a lot of people's mods. There are modders out there who, instead of building onto Jotun, they build their own core individual libraries for particular purposes. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but then it's like you'll have an update. The Jotun team is ready, or Jotun team, whatever you want to call it. They're ready to push their update, but it's conflicting with another library. It's conflicting with another mod. It's
That
one of
makes
those
more
things
breakpoints.
where yeah, it creates a lot of frustration because what ends up happening is the end user doesn't know what's going on behind the scenes, right? They don't know that this other library is causing conflicts. They don't know. So what ends up happening is sometimes as modders, um, you're getting blamed for something you have no control over, right? Like you're
Yeah.
using a library because it's the biggest, it's the best, it has all of this open source and collaboration, but you didn't know that when you built your mod on that library that the next Valheim update drop wouldn't have the Jotun team immediately within 12, 16, 18, however many hours push a new update. So you're sitting there and you're going, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why they haven't updated. And then you go to ask and you get berated because, surprise, you're now the 50th modder to ask why this, library hasn't been updated. But it turns out that what's actually happening is that library is conflicting with another library, and it's causing like irreparable harm to other people's worlds and stuff like that. It's silly because you want this community to be or modding in general, right? Like you want modding in general to be, if you're going to do something unique and you want to do it on your own, that's fine. But what you need to do is you need to ensure that you're telling people this isn't compatible, right? So one of the things, hearkening back to Kenshi, one of the things that I tell people is my mod is not meant to be compatible with other mods, right? So if you're playing with other mods,
Like,
I'm not
use it at
going
your
to
own
accept.
risk.
Yeah, I'm not going to accept you blaming me for your game crashing. I'm not going to accept, or I'm not going to allow you to smear other people as well, because specifically when you go to download the mod, you get notified that you cannot play with other mods. It's not compatible with other mods. And so what you see in a lot of cases in the Valheim community is there's no willingness to accept any fault there. It ends up being this kind of grabby and closed-minded kind of environment. And so you'll hear, "Oh, that's not my problem. That's not my mod. It sucks anyways. Why would you play with that?" Instead of,
Yeah.
"Yep,"
That's the,
instead
you
of,
just articulated the problem I have with it very well,
yeah,
because like I don't have any issues with, like, there's always going to be drama between people, but like
yeah,
the whole situation with the modding scene in Valheim, like, and I'll make one thing clear. I don't think it's necessarily just the modders' attitudes. It's also Iron Gate's attitude towards the modders that kind of
correct.
put the modders into that position in the first place. So, like, I don't know. This is just my opinion, but yeah, I think it's kind of all connected and it's all related. And, like, like, if you look at beginning players, like 90 something% of them don't use mods, and like up to half of them are actively, I don't want to say they dislike mods, but they think that mods can ruin their game, and they have a
Right.
fear of mods, like this kind of resentment almost. It's yeah, it's an interesting situation. So why do you think that is? Like, what do you think could be different?
Well, I think to a certain degree, like you have to look back on the history of modding, and a lot of it comes down to the fact that, one, modders do this as a hobby, and then you have people who become incredibly entitled because they're used to everything being handed to them. They're used to complaining about something and it being fixed, instead of just accepting a specific game design choice. So, for instance, take Minecraft, right? You have a huge modding scene. But you go into, and this isn't a problem with like just, Valheim. This is a problem in modding everywhere, right? You have the game developers who are building Minecraft, right? A massive game, multi-billions of dollars worth of, investment and development costs and et cetera. So they're building Minecraft and people get used to a certain thing. And then you go on PC and all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I can mod the game. And so you start modding the game. And then you get used to one of two responses from developers, which is silence or a very PR canned response, which is, you know what I mean? And that's not to say that that's a bad thing. Developers have a business to run. Developers are part of a business. But what ends up happening is that modders are a little bit less filtered. Because surprise, they're people. They're not speaking as, entities. They're not speaking as employees. They're speaking as hobbyists. And when you get into the hobby and you start putting your heart and soul into it, and then you have people come up to you and they ask you questions that are, one, already answered, two, have already been answered in the recent past couple minutes, and you watch people literally read something, there's no way they don't see the message directly above theirs, right? Literally the previous message, and then all of a sudden you get the same question and you're like, I literally just answered this, right? There's a certain sense of, I would say, righteous anger that comes from modders who do everything they can to document everything that they possibly know. And then they get asked the same question over and over again. But then also at the opposite end, you get people who treat you like you're a developer, who treat you like you're getting paid tens of thousands of dollars to do this. And you're like, hey, I have a family issue. My dad is dying. And people are like, I don't give a shit. When's the mod going to be updated? You're like, pause.
Yeah, and it's tricky too because they don't even say, I don't give a shit. They act like, oh, I'm so sorry, and then proceed to like blow out all over you.
Which
and
is worse.
Like,
which is worse, right?
You. Exactly. That's why I prefer when people
it's
are
so much
the way
worse because I would literally rather somebody tell me I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, I literally don't care about your family issues, your life issues. Just let me know when the mod's going to to be updated.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. At least I can respect
not
the
take
honesty.
It personally, then, because it's so brash. You know what I mean? I think you're hitting on to something though that it's not just with modding. That's like anytime you're doing anything creative and you have to deal with multiple participants or multiple players or multiple viewers, like. That is very much something that happens. The host or the project owner or whatever, you got to say the same thing over and over again. And sometimes, like, you already know that something is broken or doesn't work, but players develop, like, a sense of, like, it's if they don't tell you, you don't know. And so they have to tell you everything, but like you can't tell them everything you know because you know what I mean? There's a reason they're playing on it and you're managing the project. Like, I mean, there's an inferred understanding that you know more of the bigger picture of what's going on as the server manager. And that's so inherently true that it makes it hard to play the game normally sometimes. And so like, I completely get what you're talking about because it definitely happens. I mean, that's something I've seen myself with managing the server. Like, I've worked, not just managing the server, but making this Enigma project. I worked on it for between 20 and 35 hours a week, every week, for a year and 6 months. And I have had people send me, like, entire paragraph long, like, multi-essay format things about what I'm doing wrong. And these people don't even know, like, 2% of the whole project, and they think they have the goal to lecture me, you know what I mean? So like now I've learned that when you manage people, You have to just tell people up front. You should be like, "Fuck you, fuck off. Don't tell me what to do." Because if you don't
Yeah,
slap people around a
but
little
then
bit,
hold on,
they're,
because
they're, they don't.
they're
They
like,
cause
oh, but
problems.
you're an asshole. You're such a piece of shit. I can't believe you would talk to me like this, buddy. I'm not in this for the customer service. I'm in this for the love of the
Yeah.
game. I'm not getting paid to do this. If you want me to treat you like a customer, pay me like I'm a
Well, in
business.
those
What do
moments,
you
though,
mean?
you're never gonna get a good reaction. But that's not
Right.
the point. Like what I've learned with people is that you really have to be very, very firm, especially with certain kinds of people. They are very like they will come up with a story that makes it seem like they were right every single time, and like
Yeah.
ultimately like it's just about impacting other people. And if you know, like if you're playing on a server for free, like I mean like I don't know. I can't even imagine it, right? So like in my head I imagine that they don't see the amount of work. So they think that you're just like doing something else and you've forgotten about it. You know, like, I mean,
Yeah.
I've had situations where like I've literally been working full time on a project and then players like hear me say that and then proceed to give me shit for not for like the server being, you know, having less people. They say it's dead, they say it's failing, you know, all this kind of stuff. And it's just like what I've learned, and to any of you like listening who manage your own communities or these things, don't be afraid to say fuck you, leave me alone, go do something else. I've learned that that is really important with this kind of work. You can't let people like even if you're being unfair, it doesn't ultimately matter. What matters is the progression of the project. And so if
Right.
people's behavior is causing problems for you, even if they're being reasonable, you need to tell them to fuck off. Like it's really important. And this
Yeah.
is something I've started to learn recently because I'm very like I will try and understand everybody. I will try and
Yep.
figure out what's wrong. I will try and help. And I've learned that this part of me makes me endlessly distractible by certain personality types. I will
Correct.
try and
Correct.
help them. I will try and answer every question. They will keep asking over and over and over again, and then I end up not developing, which is the whole point in the first place. You know what I mean? So it's
I
totally true what
had
you're talking about. I think that's something everyone goes through, really.
I had a user one time. He joined my server, my Discord server. He was in there for a month, and he basically would read everything, and he would give like thumbs up emojis and whatnot. And finally, one day, he's like, "Hey, I have a bug." And so I'm like, okay. I'm like, I know that you've been in my server for a while. What's your bug? What exactly is your issue? You've been pretty receptive on searching, using the search feature, looking at the pins. You help people out with relatively confident information, and you're pretty receptive to being corrected and stuff like that. And so I'm basically like, what is your issue? And he goes, I shit you not. He goes, I know that you're already working on it. And I just about lost my fucking mind. What do you mean? Wait, hold on. Are you telling me that you're about to complain about something that you know that I already, 100% that I'm already working on, and you're telling me that you're going to file a complaint directly to me? And he was like, well, yeah. I'm like, that's literally like taking your car to a mechanic shop and saying, hey, I know that you're working on my car, but can you make sure that you're working on my car? It's like,
Yeah.
what? Who does that? Who does that?
Well,
And I was
that's the
like,
thing.
so I,
A lot of people do that, and that's what's been so crazy. It's like people are really dysfunctional, and like as you manage a community, you have to kind of learn to understand that like when people behave that way, they're actually quite lonely. They have a lot of stuff going on in their personal life, and that helps like understand that like oh, they're literally complaining to you to get human connection with you. Like
yeah,
that's why they do it. And like so I keep that in mind because otherwise like I can be like especially these days I can be very upfront and sometimes aggressive with people because I've learned like because of who I am and the way I am, people will take advantage of me unless I slap them around a bit when they do that. And that's you know that's just how it is. And I think that is how it is for a lot of people as well. And it's one of the reasons that you don't find like oh, sorry about that. you
You're
don't
good.
find kind, nice people in the world too much, because by the time you get older, you've been kind of, you know, things have happened and now you're frustrated.
Yeah, and I feel like, right, that whole relationship experience where people feel like they deserve the customer, satisfaction experience from modders, who, by the way, are absolutely people. You know what I mean? Like, they have day to
Yeah.
days, they have, their own lives, just like every other artist out there. The difference is that they have this large project that they have to, you know go out of their way to manage. And not only are they managing that, they're managing compatibility between different kinds of projects going on that are supplemental to theirs. And which one were we on? This one? I guess it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter that much. um but it's one of those things where it's like, you know especially when it comes to mods. Certain mods are going to be incompatible because two modders have different ideas, and that's fine. But then you start getting blamed because they're trying to use those two mods together, or your it's so it can be incredibly exhausting, right? Because you want, as a quote unquote customer, as a player playing mods, you want a modder to give you the time of day. And a lot of modders want to do that. They're eager to do that. And then you turn around and you demand 100% satisfaction, customer experience all of the time, and yet you offer none of the benefits that a customer would give, right? The
Yeah.
fact that, the customer is paying for something, right? And so then you get the people who, as a modder, you're making something for free, and somebody's like, hey, open a donation thing. So you open a donation thing and you're like, I'll get $10, I'll get $15. And then you get the people who come in there and they feel entitled because somebody else is paying you $5 a month. And they're like, well, you're getting paid for this. You're not paying me. Even if you wanted to look at this as a customer service relationship, you're not my customer. You're literally
Yeah.
some guy on the sidewalk screaming at my business. If we're going to continue the analogy the whole way,
It's
it,
uh
it it's inc-
it's actually very
it's
interesting you bring
incredibly,
this up, because
yeah.
you're talking about it from the context of modding, but I think what you're getting at into is actually the core reason that Valheim is managed the way it is. Once it became popular, the people managing Valheim could not handle exactly what you're describing. Because realistically,
Yeah.
they were being treated like they were some AAA studio that had financed everything and was set. And like what actually happened, like, was a different scenario. And so later on, yeah, there was a lot of money in the picture, but it's very complicated, and it's, in a situation where that was like almost a decade into someone's passion project. Like, Valheim
Yeah.
didn't just come out of nowhere. It was not developed quickly, and most of the game as we know it today was developed before 2021. Even today, like, if you take 0% and whatever the game was when it came out on Steam, most of the development still happened before the Steam release. If you look at like the world generation and just a lot of the systems that are in the game itself, it really hasn't been developed that much. And there's a lot of theorizing and a lot of theory crafting about why and that kind of thing, and publishers and all that. But I think at the core of it, it's what you're describing. It's this dysfunctional nature of people in general. And like, I can deal with these things because I've been public on YouTube. I've been exposing my emotions. I've cried on the internet. There's no secrets in my life. I've exposed myself
I,
fully, and I
I
did
I
so
literally
decades
do
ago.
philosophy videos about my life, and the
Yeah, you
position
get
I'm
it. You
at
get
in
it.
life.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you get used to it, but most people,
yeah.
they are not used to it, and I will say that at one point in my life, I had an experience where I pissed off a larger YouTuber, and he leveraged, like, purposefully his whole audience against me. And that was horrible. Like, definitely, it was horrible to like wake up and each day there's tens of people telling you to go die in a hole and that you're a piece of shit and that you lie and you steal, even though like
Yeah.
you were always honest about what was happening. They just assumed something and then got mad at you because the assumption was wrong. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with
Yeah.
people? They're so dysfunctional that it's overwhelming, right? And like, I think that's basically that same thing you're talking about is what Iron Gate, and I don't know the specifics, you know, I'd have to talk to them individually, and I don't know if they ever would talk to me about these things, but that Iron Gate basically was overwhelmed by the sheer level of comments in these things. And like, if you look at them
Yeah.
in interviews, you can tell like they talk about the negative comments, they read them, they take them to heart. And that for me is like the greatest learning lesson, is that like you really need, again, I don't mean to be mean, but like you need to be able to be mean to people if you want to develop games and like have a good relationship with your community. That's what's so weird about it. Like if you're not mean to
Yeah.
your community in the right moments, then overall your community is going to suffer and they're going to resent you. It's like you have to be willing to be serious and upfront when it's necessary, but also to be forgiving and understand that, you know, people make mistakes and you make mistakes, you know? And like that's the thing that's just overall missing, you know, with Valheim itself. And, you know, I can't say I blame them because, like you said, it's fucking hard. Like really hard. And especially a game like Valheim, it got millions of players. Like, imagine going from like, oh, this is some passion project, you know, you've kind of been involved in, it's growing a little bit. And then boom, suddenly it's like the 11th most played game ever on Steam. Like, that's a
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
no chance to deal with. You know, it's like 1 to 1 million. Like, just poof. Like, that's got to be harsh on the psyche. So I don't blame them, you know. But it's still like, it doesn't change the reality that there's a very fragmented, you know, base of people. So could you tell me more? You mentioned that, like, what do you think the modding community could do to be less fragmented? So, like, to be more, I don't know, like, inclusive
I would
of
say
new people, I guess? What do you think?
it's it kind of like I almost want to say like there kind of isn't really anything like modding community itself can do. I think more so like it needs the developers to step in. Um, so they need to create a space where you have the ability from a top-down authoritarian perspective of the developers saying, hey, we're not going to allow this, right? I don't want to hear you, you know, crapping on other modders if they do something wrong or do something a way that like you don't approve of. Like, knock that off. Otherwise, we're going to ban you from the game, from the community, whatever.
Yeah.
That's something that basically what happened in Kenshi was the community admins we have now are volunteers, and in Kenshi they're in control of everything everywhere, right? Like on the Kenshi developers website, they're admins there. On the Steam workshop, they're admins there. On the Discord servers, they're admins there. So it's like when you break,
Yeah, they're
you know,
involved.
a rule, you know what I mean? Like you get banned everywhere, you get punished everywhere. And they try to be very fair, right? Like if you get banned on the Discord, you get a black mark against you on Steam and Reddit and everywhere else, but you don't get banned, right? But it's like, hey, we know this is your account, we know this is you. If you act up here, it's an instantaneous ban. And so everybody's on the same page when it comes to moderation, when it comes to, you know, community and stuff like that, right? The community must come before any drama. And I think the thing with what happened with Valheim is you had kind of a small subset of modding communities pop up. And then when the game explodes, they explode because everybody wants to do modding. Everybody wants to be a part of the big modding community, the big, popular mods and whatever. So you have stuff like Valheim Plus, which was really big at the time and is still pretty popular. Everybody joins that server. Everybody uses Valheim Plus because it has so many cool features. But then you want something like epic loot or jewel crafting, and those are just strictly incompatible because of choices that both of those modders made.
Or like you want to use
compared
two
to
mods
Valheim
that
Plus.
change world generation. Like you want to use Riverheim and expand world data. You can't do that because they try and change the same things basically, so it messes everything up.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where especially as modders, kind of you all need to be on the same page of not blaming each other, right? Like it's not you can advise somebody on what you think best practices are, but unless we're all going to contribute to one universal library project, right, that has all the features we need, all of the changes that we need, and we go through and we itemize every single change like as a giant organization of modders, and we bring modders into that kind of community almost like a religion, then what ends up happening is you have fractures. And if you have fractures that are actively competing against each other, you know what I mean? Like it's like a volcano competing with the ocean, right? The volcano can be destructively beautiful. The ocean can be, beautifully deadly. But when those two collide, you have this fissure point, and that fissure point is what catches most people in the community in the crossfire, right? So one of the
Why does that happen? Like, because from my perspective, they're not competing. I don't get it.
It's because people think that they know better than somebody else. That's what it comes down to.
But even if they do, like, I don't understand where like when I look at another person's project, I don't see like, oh, that's a competitor. I see like, oh, that's something I can learn from. I want to like, okay, like how do I explain this? All right, recently I play tested Dakar's Heimdivers project. I'm running an EWP project. He's running an EWP project. I didn't ever think, oh, Dakar is my competitor. I need to beat. Like, literally never has that even crossed my mind. I just think, like, Dakar makes really cool stuff. I want to see what he's made. And so I try it, and it inspires me, and I get triggered to making something myself. So, like, I can't even wrap my mind around why do they view each other as competitors? Like, why is another mod your competitor? I don't get it. Isn't it in your best interest that you share players? I don't understand.
I think the one thing is like, so it's very easy because again, we're talking about a centralized source, right? Like you're not necessarily the modder, you're not Jer, right? Like Jer is the one that codes EWP. Meaning that nothing you do specifically will necessarily conflict with what Jer does. And that the project that you set up is different than the project that Dakar sets up. Heimdivers is awesome, by the way. But you guys use the same source, right? And so people, when it comes to modding, don't necessarily use the same source because modding, especially in this particular instance, is not supported by Valheim. And because it's not supported by Valheim, you have to crack the game open. And because you crack the game open, that means there are typically best practices of allowing modders to stick their hands in the cookie jar that they're not supposed to be in. In this particular case, we're talking about Valheim. So when you go to download a mod, like EWP, this is only pulling stuff from the vanilla game and giving you access to it, which you normally don't have. But when it comes to something like jewel crafting or epic loot, they're pulling something and then they're attaching onto it, right? They're basically saying this is my cookie, right? In the entirety of the cookie jar, this is my cookie. And because you're trying to grab the same cookie in a different way, we can't work together. And so, you know, I guess if we're talking about this in like programming, you know, if somebody is trying to change the same hair that I have, what is the hair I have on this character? Royal braid or whatever. If I'm trying to change royal braid and somebody else tries to change royal braid against me, right? That causes friction.
Yeah.
And so because of that, what ends up happening is
I turned on to the other part.
Oh. What ends up happening is that people, what ends up happening is that people, they feel like they're entitled to being right. And so you get this, instead of allowing like these two people to come together because they have very different ideas, right? One of them wants to code this way and the other one wants to code this way. It's the same thing with programming, right? Like what's the difference between C# and C++? What's the difference between C++ and Go? What's the difference between, and all of them have their purposes, but you talk to programmers and they're like, Rust is the best, or I use C++ or I use C# because it's the most performative and it's the closest layer, and you're like, I don't care. I just want to know what is the best way for me to code my own project. And that's kind of where the issue comes in, is like too many people believe that they're doing the right thing. Too many people believe humility, basically, to summarize. Humility is what's wrong. Too many people don't want to admit the fact that somebody has a different way of doing things, and that's okay. But instead of blaming them, you get this kind of competitive nature, right? And I think part of that comes down to, you know, our society as a whole. You know what I mean? We've basically commodified and social media-fied and gamified everything we possibly could about the human connection, and that makes us more competitive by nature, right? You know, my
society, or English speaking Western society.
Yeah. My mod has 2 million downloads and your mod has 1.5. That means I'm a better modder. It's like, what? Your mod is also 3 years older than mine, and mine's, you know, 2 months old.
Glory of numbers,
Yeah. It's the glory of numbers, humility and stuff like that. And to some degree, I would argue some of it probably is partially greed. You know what I mean? Like if you're a really good modder, you can get people to support you, you know, $2, $5, $100 a month. And it goes from one person to two person to three people to 1,000 people to, you know, there's projects in the Valheim community where I know the person for sure is making thousands and thousands of dollars a month. And, you know, when you get into a position where you can be comfortable and stay at home and kind of deliberate to other people what the right way to do things is, because you have this big project and you're making a lot of money, you know, it becomes one of those things where it creates, you're no longer doing it for the love of the game. You're doing it because, you know, you can make money from it. And that's not to say that people don't still have jobs. People, yeah. It's human nature. You know what I mean? You're really arguing against human nature. So how do you fix things? How do you change things? It's a good question. It's the question that's in, you know, I don't know if you know anything about Minecraft modding, but originally there was the Forge project, and everybody loved the Forge project. And then people didn't like the Forge project because it was too big, it was too clunky. So then you had the Fabric project, and Fabric is smooth, it's fast, it's efficient, you know, it has the best performance. Yeah. But Forge is big and clunky, and that means it has bigger mods. It means that it has better content mods. But if you want the prettiest, most efficient, fastest gameplay with kind of vanilla Minecraft, you play Fabric. But some people within the Fabric team didn't like the Fabric team, so then they made Quilt. And some people within the Forge team liked the Fabric team, but they didn't like the Forge team, but they also didn't like other parts of the Fabric team, and they didn't want to convert to the Quilt team, so then they made Neo Forge. But some people in the Neo Forge team are still working on the Fabric team, so Neo Forge and Fabric are you're like, what are you talking about? What do you sound insane. That's what it is. It's human nature. It is the fact that somebody can't be humble enough to accept the fact that sometimes you have to put aside your own arrogance, your own ideas, your own, ways of doing things, and you either have to make your own thing and not attack other people, right? Or you have to, put aside your ideas and work with somebody you may not like. And so you take a look at the Minecraft scene, and you have like 12 different mod loaders or something like that. You have cracked mod loaders.
So I convert it in my head, right? That's like having 12 different BepNX options. Is that right?
Basically, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so there's this idea of, I know what's best. People bring their politics into it. People bring their religion into it. People bring their whatever, they want to bring into it. Sometimes it's as simple as superiority complex, right? You know what I mean? And that can be kind of fixed very easily. But when it becomes ideological, I'm better, you suck because you're a terrible programmer. When it becomes this kind of ideology, it becomes very intoxicating, because people, even if you're cracking jokes, people start to repeat those jokes. And then that joke, especially in places like Reddit, becomes dogma. Yeah. So one of the things that I'll speak on, one of the things that I'll speak on specifically to the Valheim community is, I don't know if you know the modder Blackson, or Smoothbrain, as she's called on Thunderstore.
Yeah.
But she basically made, what is it? It's like mod DRM, right? She made mod DRM. And so basically what it is you put this package in your mod, and it allows you to basically blacklist servers. And the reason the tool was made was because there were server owners out there in the Valheim community who were selling their mods, right? They were selling access to their mods. And so what ended up happening was the modders are getting screwed over. The community is getting screwed over, because modding is generally supposed to be free. If you want to make paid mods, you don't put it on a free website and then lock it down, right? But if you
also,
all of a sudden have,
you made the mod, at least,
right?
One would hope.
And so it was stuff like, there are people out there who they were like, they started attacking her, because nobody cares what the backstory is. Nobody cares what the reason is. They just want something the way they want something. And so I was, my first run in with her was pretty heated. I was like, hey, I'm like, you can't, according to your privacy policies, you live in Europe, legally by law, you have to ensure that all people's data is gone within this time frame. This is the law that you have to follow because you live in Europe. And so we got in a big back and forth, but I ended up becoming friends with her. I say friends, but relatively close acquaintances. I ended up becoming friends with her, and But it's one of those things where, like, if you go on r/modded Valheim, every once in a while, somebody will make a new account because their previous one got banned. And then they'll start talking shit about her, and they'll start talking shit about how, this has DRM in it and you can't play without, because some artist out there, I'll
It's
call him out
funny.
because I don't necessarily. Yeah, I'll call him out because I don't necessarily care. But there is a modder in the community who offers a free version and a paid version, and I will never cover any of his mods. I will never talk about his mods. And the way he uses her tool is basically at the expense of her name, right? She doesn't like the idea of paid mods, but she's not going to pull down the tool because the tool is useful for the community. It allows the larger creators who have more popular mods to not have their mods stolen and pirated and stuff like that. And so I get it. And it's
So
not
I'd like
it's not a
to.
safety.
I want to stop you
Yeah,
just
yeah,
for a moment to give some people some backstory, because a lot of players won't know about this. But basically, there's a certain type of individual who makes money by setting up modded game servers for people for hundreds of dollars. They literally scam people who don't know how it works. And like
yeah,
I know those people because I interacted with one of them. And that's literally how it works. They convince people that it's their mod, but really they're just downloading mods. They're not, but they like frame themselves to their, their player group who's always less educated than them, and they frame themselves as the creators of these experiences. It's almost as if like if you had tried to say that your version of the MMO map, all of the mods were made by you. You pointed out you're using mods other people have made. Imagine you didn't do that part
yeah,
and you just took credit for everything. That's what these people do. So like I can start to put that together now because I didn't know about these people either until I started running this project, and I run an open source project. And there was an individual who joined who I had a lot of problems with. But like, he stuck around. I learned from him while he was there. And at one point he does that. He like takes the files and then runs it and then gets mad at me because I didn't think that somebody would just launch it from the beginning without being in the Discord. So like him and all his friends, they made a new world, and then the ghost system in this world you're in right now, when you die, a ghost will like spawn on your body with your name later.
yeah,
Right? So basically, he made the server for people, and then they all join, and they just get spawn camped in the center of the world by their own ghosts. Because one of them, like, joined and, like, got killed by, like a boar near the start or something.
yeah,
And so he was super pissed at me. And, like, that exact attitude you're describing, they have this way of, like, I earn this much money from servers. I know what I'm talking about. It's this very
right.
antagonistic, cheating. Like this individual also left loads of tombstones all over the server with like cheated items and cheat swords, and like
Yep.
complained about the server being too hard. Proceeded to spread cheat items everywhere. Like he would not like throw them on the ground. Like he would die with them, which I thought was
Yeah.
fucking hilarious. Like so funny. But it's true. Like that's a whole kind of person, and they're a pain in the ass, man. They're super toxic, and like now I
Yeah.
kind of can tell that vibe. They have this kind of attitude, and it's like, oof, brutal.
And it sucks because it's like think back on the conversation we've had so far, right? Like we're not even talking about like one type of person. Like one type of person isn't the person that the modder is competing against, right? Like you're talking about modders out there who are assholes. You're talking about people out there who feel like they're entitled. You're talking about people out there who will steal your work and make money off of it.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
and then
you
say
could
it's
be dirt
theirs.
poor. Right, right. You're talking about people who will blame you for another mod for their problems. Like and it sucks because all of this is what modders and project leads and stuff like that and developers and businesses have to deal with on a daily, cycle. And it's like eventually you're like, I I don't care. 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 I don't I don't care anymore. Like I genuinely don't care anymore. Like and I think that's the worst part is like because that leaves a modder with two options. Either you become very cold to people, or I'll just speak on artists in general. You eventually become very cold to people and you become reclusive, and then you drop something and then you disappear. Or two, you become incredibly hostile to the system and everything around you. And so what ends up happening is like you meet some bright-eyed, starry new modder or artist or whatever that wants to show up and you're like, yeah, well, this sucks and blah blah blah, and you have to realize like they're in your position, that you were in 4 years ago or 5 years ago. And I used to have a lot of experience in the Oblivion modding scene and a lot of experience in the Skyrim modding scene. And eventually it got to the point where like that community became so broken and dysfunctional and toxic. And I was a part of that I started like I hated like waking up every day and seeing my Nexus Mods account being flooded with comments of things that I've already answered and guides that I've already written and you know what I mean? And it's like sometimes like thank you goes a long way. And then so I eventually like wiped my account. I turned off all the comments, turned off all the bug reports, and I kind of moved on. And then same thing happened with Kenshi, but it wasn't to me, right? Like it was just like I already had an idea of what I wanted to do with the project. I already knew how I was going to run it. I had the experience, and so I would see new modders in Kenshi getting like lambasted over simple mistakes from the community, right? Like they would make a new sword model and add it to the game. And it would be, beautiful, but it would have like some odd bugs or some odd, maybe it does 10,000 damage and it's supposed to do 1,000 damage. Stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like simple overlooks. Oops, an extra 0 here. Oops, an extra 2 there. Stuff. Oh, a decimal place out of. And you would watch these people and they make some of the most beautiful art you've ever seen created. And they tried for months and months and months on this one project. And then the community lambasts them and they roast them. And sometimes it's not just from like entitled people, it's from other modders. How dare you, how could you miss this? How could you screw this up? Blah, blah, blah. And you're like, so what I ended up doing was basically when they were at their breaking point, I would swoop in and snatch them up. And so that's how I ended up getting in contact with Hugo and stuff like that. I basically built my community on the idea of collaboration, and the idea of I'm going to be the asshole. You know what I mean? Like people talk about, oh, well, I'll just use this website for downloading mods. Okay, that website is, stealing mods from actual creators. You're not going to get support. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the game. And if you want to play with a pirated game, you can use Nexus Mods or whatever, right? And so like I have very, very strict rules in my community where, the very front facing like modders don't deal with the customer service side of things. Like so, some of my most common responses are to gifts that I have on Discord. And one of them is it's this little bunny rabbit and it points at a sign with like the teaching stick and it says, have you read the pins? And then the other one is somebody furiously typing, and then it's like it smash cuts to a Discord search bar up in the top right hand corner, and it's like and it's got like a giant red arrow pointing at it. Yeah. So, but it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, like you're such an asshole, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't really care about that because at the end of the day, there's, I don't know, 3,000 some odd people in my Discord server. I ensure that, the people that would cause trouble don't get to stay in my community. But I also ensure that the people who don't understand that they're causing trouble butt heads with me instead of the average modder. And
Yeah.
ironically, it has made my community the place to go for Kenshi modding. So what ends up happening is people are like, I was told to come here because so and so said that, and they sent me a DM. I didn't know modding could be like this. I'm like, yeah, hey, welcome to the community. Let me handle the community side of things and you worry about modding. And then they're like, wow, this is great. I love modding. But I think, you know, in relation to Valheim, it it requires people relinquishing a little bit of power, right? Like you need somebody who can be in control of the community while you focus on modding, while you focus on supporting each other as creators, right? Um, you know, if you look at it like kind of like YouTube, which is something I think you'll get, um, your channel has like 25,000 subscribers or something like that. Mine has 2,000, right? If we're not
just
able to
be
sit
clear
down and
with
have
you, I only have like 2,000 or 3,000 Valheim subscribers. I got
yeah
22 subscribers because I used to make drop shipping content. I was like one of those drop shipping guru people. And then
in that
I
case,
came to
let
see
me end the call
the
real quick.
disgusting error of my ways. But that, yeah, that's
But
how
yeah,
it went,
yeah.
basically.
And I mean to some degree, you know what I mean? Like if you and I aren't able to collaborate, if you and I aren't willing to take the risk on each other, you know what I mean? It creates this you see it everywhere with other types of content creation, you know, VTubers who are like, I have 1 million subscribers on Twitch. Don't, you know, talk to me. I'm better than you. And it's kind of just you have to be open and willing to collaborate. You have to be open and willing to hear somebody say, I think you're wrong. I think you're doing this wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it I don't know, man. I've been in the game so long, in the modding game so long. I've watched communities transform into like the golden age of modding, and then all of a sudden you turn around 6 months later and you're
Devolve.
like, why is everybody at yeah, it
Yeah.
just devolved.
So Easy Border has a question, and then he had some other comments that I'll read. But first, I'll ask his question because it seems pretty short. He asked, "Why do you think that 32 years is old?"
I have had a very long and eventful life.
So you
Um,
feel old.
to be a little bit
In your
morbid here,
defense, we had just started talking about RuneScape. So maybe, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, you know,
It ages you. It ages you. Um, but yeah, I've had a you know, not to keep this or not to turn this into a very morbid and dark discussion, but I've had a very eventful and dark life. I have lived enough lifetimes in the 32 years that I've been alive than most people in, you know, to be succinct, I have seen more dead bodies than some people in the military. Um, so
no,
I have lived
honestly, it's
a
funny you say that because, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but basically,
yeah.
I'm someone who left the West. I fled the West because as a child, my father died, and my exposure to death as a young person made society as I knew it isolate me because American society in particular is incredibly immature. It has very
Yeah.
little ability to actually deal with trauma. And especially over the past 10 or 15 years, it's degraded a lot. It's been very subverted. So there's a lot of hardship in society that isn't talked about or addressed. So it makes sense, actually, because I noticed a couple times, I was like, huh, relating to this, there's a vibe I get from you. And I figured out it's the
Yeah.
morbidity. That's the
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah.
So I feel you. You know, I don't know what you've been
It's
through,
it,
but I
it's
understand.
funny because it's if you were to watch maybe like 5 minutes of my pinned YouTube video, you would go, well, why didn't he introduce himself like that? And you realize like it sets the tone for the conversation because originally when we had the 15 or so minutes before
Yeah, that's why
the
I asked
stream,
you, actually. I wanted to
I
see
was
what you
like,
wanted.
yeah, I was like, well, I'm like, I'm not necessarily lying if I don't say anything, but also like if I, straight out and well, back when I was 5, this happened, and I was just like, you know what, I'll stick to the more lighthearted part of, because I think it's different. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain level of, especially going through, as I said earlier, going through philosophy, and exploring my own trauma, my own past, and my current living situation. It has been one of those things where it makes you reassess like how important certain things are. And I kind of had that mentality because of my life, where I can be in the middle of an internet argument with somebody, and then I'm just like, okay, I'm bored, and then I walk off. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, I don't care. Like it doesn't stress me out. It doesn't affect me in any way, no matter how heated the conversation may seem. If you see me in real life, you would be like, there's no way you're not trolling this person right now. And be like, no, I'm having an honest discussion with them. But it's one of those things where you learn a lot about people and communities when you do something for free. And being in the modding community in general for such a long time has kind of shown me that, there are certain problems that kind of just would require like very top down, harsh, oversight. But yeah, it's interesting. It's 32 years and I'm feeling old.
Hey, it's funny. I am you're older than me, I think. I think I'm 31. I've actually lost track.
Yeah, right. I don't care what my age is anymore. I just remember a general number.
I will say, like, I feel older now. I think from managing a community and like you get used to like having to deal with people, and it's a lot like dealing with children. Like, and you think
Correct.
that, because people are in their 50s or 60s, that they're mature and they understand how to be respectful to others. And like,
Right.
that's an assumption.
Oh God.
You know what I
Oh
mean? Like,
God.
I've learned adults are not adults. An adult is an illusion, just like Santa Claus,
Right.
that
Right.
tricks children into thinking they exist, but they don't actually exist. There
Yeah.
is no adult. It's not real. But
There's no such thing as an adult.
yeah, exactly. Before I move
Uh,
on, I wanted to read some of Easy's other comments because he's been chatting. So basically, he asked that question, right? And then he talked about how he's noticed that in the modding community in general, there's a couple really good mods, but then their community like isn't managed at all, and like it definitely seems to be like a different skill set. So I think he was agreeing with something you had touched on there. And then after he
yeah.
responded,
Yeah.
he said that's very understandable. That stuff takes a toll, but it can also bring a great type of energy to look at things objectively, though that's not easy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always interesting because
Let's see,
if
scroll
you're
down.
if you're able to manage a community and then you know uh if you're able to split managing a community and then also at the same time split like content creation, whatever type of creation you're doing, if you're able to split managing a community to somebody you trust, or you take over managing a community, and you split the content creation to somebody else you trust that can do the vision that you have, that's amazing. And that was kind of one of the things when I got started with my Kenshi project. That was the thing I wanted to do, the community management. I wanted to be the community guy. But like I said, I ended up getting into a position where basically the leads ended up having to abandon the project for various reasons. And so I literally have been holding my W key this whole time, and I just remembered right now I can just press Q.
Yeah.
Um, but it's one of those things where, especially as a creator and as a community manager, um, it can be incredibly taxing. It can be one of, it can be one of, I would argue probably, it's like being a CEO, but also the cashier. You know what I mean? Like you have to make all of the decisions about everything behind the scenes, but also you have to be the front face of the company right there in the battle zone, and I don't, you know what I mean? Like it would be very nice if we could create like modding organizations where, you have a couple people who do community management and you kind of just focus on the project.
Yeah, in general, people do best when they're like that's what I've learned about working with people. It's like you actually touched on it earlier. It's something I've noticed as well. It's like if you just try and be polite all the time, you end up with a very dysfunctional community that can't actually handle conflict. What you
Yeah.
actually have to do is like basically you said something earlier and it stuck with me and it reminded me of this phrase, and it's that community forms through managing drama. So like a lot
Yeah.
of people think that drama is like a sign of a bad community, but drama is just humans having friction. It's like when a human is next
Right.
to another human, there's gonna be drama. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's gonna be some things that happen, and it's like you have to learn to deal with that conflict. And if you're just trying to always be polite and never piss anyone off, then you can't really deal with that conflict effectively. And I want to address
Yeah.
one
You have to
thing.
be willing to be confrontational.
Yeah, exactly. And but before I address this, welcome M2. I just to clarify, I was making a joke because most of my Twitch viewers are Discord bots, so they'll like join and then act like they're being nice and make some small talk. And so like I was just joking that maybe you're one of those people, but you're not. So that's awesome. Welcome, welcome. But Atlas, what you said earlier that I wanted to mention is you mentioned criticism, and this is actually an interesting thing because so I've had issues recently where I've realized like so you actually said something that I'll disagree with a little bit. You said that you need to be open to hearing criticism. I think in a certain context that's right when timing is right. But what I've learned is that just because one can hear criticism doesn't mean that one has to respect those who dish out criticism and comments with absolutely no respect to timing or circumstance. And that's basically a lesson that I've been learning, particularly with Ping. I don't know if you're listening, Ping, but you're very frustrating. But he knows I've communicated this with him and these things. But like basically, like people have a way of like certain people will always just comment and comment and comment and comment. And like
So,
from one
okay, hold on.
oh
I,
go
I
on,
gotta
go on.
I gotta cut you off because you, sir, have not yet aged in your community management to understand what you're talking about yet. You are not talking about criticism, you're talking about complaints. Criticism is usually constructive in its environment, right? So to say, hey, I think this is broken, or I don't like this is generally constructive criticism. Hey, this is broken. Hey, this is broken. Hey, this is broken is a complainer. So I think to say that we disagree is wrong. I think we actually agree 100%, but I
Yeah,
don't
it's
think that
the
you've been in.
phrasing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you've been in the game long enough
Well,
to
it's
go,
more
wait, hold
I'm
on.
talking to myself because
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I used to feel that like I should let anyone criticize the project and what I'm doing at any point, and I shouldn't let it affect me. What
Yeah.
I've come to understand is I need to be realistic with myself and understand I'm quite a sensitive person. And in general, like I get constant feedback and criticism. I don't need to prove anything by listening to all of it. Does that make sense? Like, I don't
Yeah.
need to
Yeah,
prove
yeah.
that I must listen to all criticism. I don't need to prove that, like, I'm a person who can listen to criticism. And so for me, it was kind of
Yeah.
like a turning point in my development to be able to say, like, no, fuck off. Like, I don't care if I'm being rash to you right now. This is the effect, and I can tell it's detrimental. You know what I mean? Like for me, I wouldn't say that. I wasn't ready to say that before, but it took
Yeah.
my personal life changing. And then I had a couple experiences where like I called people out or was very like, like upfront with them. And then I expected them to like fuck off or leave. And then like in two cases, they started contributing to me on Patreon after that. And I was like, what the fuck? Like that was the last thing I expected. But after I reflected on it, I came to realize it's like, well, that's probably because ultimately like people mean well, but they often are quite stressed and also being mistreated in their own life. So they're fully capable of like not reading the room and just saying something or being disrespectful, and they're not going to know any better. You know what I mean? So like ultimately at the end of the day, it's like what you said earlier. Sometimes you just got to go do something else. That's all it takes. It doesn't really matter that much, but there's something about staying on the computer all day and continuing to type and respond. It's like, it grows, grows, grows. So it's definitely better to just, go do
I
something
think
else
in
those moments.
in the years that I have kind of balanced both being a modder, a creator, and a community manager, one of the hardest things that I learned was not all criticism is good criticism, right? So one of the things that you have to set out like very transparently, it is like my Discord rules are like, you have to act like an adult, you have to be an adult, you have to respect others, and the moderators have the last say. And basically that creates this environment of, I'm not going to babysit you, I'm not going to handhold you, and if you ask a question, you're going to get an answer, and it's not always going to be an answer you like. But that doesn't mean that I'm mad at you. That doesn't mean that I'm not respectful towards you. It just means sometimes I have other shit going on. You know what I mean? And so it's one of those things where, especially, I think a lot of people, let me put it like this. I think a lot of people think that criticism is the same as complaining, right? Like it's one thing for me to say that I hate your jacket, it's stupid, right? That doesn't make any sense in the context of any
3.
Right. It's one of those things where it's just like, or for instance, like, let's take a look at this structure over here. It says kits on it, right? I could say, wow, this structure is too low. It has the ocean clipping through it. Haha, that's dumb. Well, that's not constructive. That's not criticism. That's just an insult, right? That's a complaint. That's me, whoever built this, whatever they built it for, that's ignoring all the context.
Yeah.
But if I say, hey, what if we, download Infinity Hammer and we raise it up by 2 platforms? Do you think that would work as a better, whatever I want to learn what this is. Is this a beach side, an oceanfront seafood place? Is it a restaurant? Is it a bar? What is this? And then now that I've learned about it, okay, do you think that we could raise it up by 2 poles, with Infinity Hammer? Let's, instead of destroying everything and rebuilding it, that's like criticism, right? The criticism, the criticism is criticism is always constructive, right? I could say, oh wow, your blue shirt doesn't match your pants, and that's criticism, but again, it's not constructive. If I said, hey, have you tried this armor instead of the tunic that you're wearing? You'd be like, well, no, I haven't. Oh wow, this actually looks better. You know what I mean? Like, criticism should always be constructive, and that's not to say sometimes criticism can't just come out sloppy. Like, I'm not telling people to like put themselves in a way that is incredibly strenuous to them, but understand that if you're giving lazy criticism, you're going to get pushback eventually. And so for reference, one of the things that I have yet to talk about is I'm actually community manager for a South Korean indie dev team, and they're making a game called Ovis Loop. It's a action roguelike game. I have set up the Discord in a very particular way, and a lot of people are lazy, right? So in one of the forums that we have, I have a feedback tag, and a suggestion tag, and people like to click both of them. So when I delete their post, I say nope, remake it, separate the feedback from the suggestion, because feedback is one thing, a suggestion is a separate thing. I'm not saying they can't be in relation to each other, but it's easier, to manage things that way. And again, that's criticism, right? I want them to understand how to take their ideas, and instead of word vomiting all over somebody, I want them to be able to go, okay, this is my feedback. I don't like this, blah, blah, blah. Feedback is basically complaining. I don't like this. I feel like this is too hard, et cetera, et cetera. It's not necessarily, I think you should change this, which is a suggestion. It's just me venting, I don't like this process. I think, so for instance, like if we were talking about Valheim, I think Valheim has an inventory problem. But I'm not going to go to the developers and say, hey, I think Valheim has an inventory problem, because guess what? 20,000 other people have already said that to him, at least today on Twitter.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
know
that's
that.
not criticism. That's kind of just me complaining.
Yeah.
While it has its place and its time, that's feedback. But if I want criticism, I need to have a relational argument to it. And then if I have a suggestion, I need to separate the suggestion from that relational argument, to be able to ensure that the people who are going out of their way to make whatever I like, are able to separate the parts of what I'm saying down. And so I just think it was funny because
boil it down. It makes sense.
Yeah, I think you and I both agree on that point, right? Like there's a certain point where you have to say, stop complaining. This isn't criticism. This isn't even feedback. This is just literally you complaining. But yeah, I thought it was funny because I was like,
maybe you can help me understand something about myself. So basically, like I practice open source development. So I literally live develop, not open source. I do live development. So I develop a project live on a public server and update it, and people like are playtesting it, and like they don't even know necessarily all the things that they're playtesting. Because sometimes I just like there's two ways I'll test something. I'll tell them so that if they're interested, they'll try it, or I just do it and see if they notice.
Yeah.
And they're both really useful depending, right? But what I've noticed is like sometimes it's hard for me to tell when I take something personally and get frustrated and when I don't. And so I'd like I'll share a little bit about that, and then maybe you can share some of your experiences with it.
Yeah, go for it.
I've noticed that there are times like someone can join, they can go on a rant about how they hate everything, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. And I don't take it personally. I don't care. Most of the time, that's how I feel. Like somebody can just be completely convinced that it is, a horrible thing, or they're given a bunch of, they think something matters a whole bunch, and like, it isn't even what they're saying. You know what I mean? Like people sometimes complain about a mechanic I haven't even made, and they're misunderstanding something that the game already does that I didn't do, right? So that's something else entirely. But normally I have this very like kind of jolly, chill attitude with things. I'm very much like, yeah, whatever. Even if someone like pisses me off, I'm probably not gonna like ban them or get rid of them or even really move against them that much, aside from like calling them out in public. That's basically what I do. I'm not gonna actually like try and like get rid of them unless they really force me to. But I've noticed that sometimes I get really frustrated, and there's a specific situation where I get very frustrated and I don't fully understand why. And here's what happens. Essentially, if somebody tells me, if they try and intervene with me, so like basically people can write paragraphs and paragraphs of feedback saying what they think is better, saying what doesn't work. I love it. Like literally, I love it. Even if it's negative, like I don't feel offended by it. But the moment someone says, you need to do this. And like, I didn't even ask. I'm not even like involving them. I'm managing someone else. And like, this is why I'm mad at Ping, because basically they'll comment a lot
Oh
constantly
wait, hold on.
about his
Is he a
opinion about
helper?
things.
Is he a helper?
What do you mean
He's
helper?
he's the kind of person who he's the kind of person who he's been there long enough to understand what makes you mad, but he wants to help, but he always interjects right before you answer.
Maybe. I think he means well, to
Technically,
be honest, but he's
yeah.
a troll. He's definitely a troll. He talks way too much and has issues, and then like I've been patient with that, but eventually realized his ability to write more comments is further than my patience. Does that make sense? So eventually I realized, I'm like, damn, I gotta like just stop responding because it's endless. Like it
Oh,
just goes on and on and on, you know what I mean? But
I think
basically
my
what I've
game just
noticed,
crashed.
yeah. You're walking in place here, so it could be. But basically what I've been trying to understand is like, why do I feel personal about the things with this specific individual? There's two people in the community, Ping and Jerry. Both of them, for some reason, when they make a comment, I feel personally attacked, even if their comment is not attacking. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I don't really
Um,
understand, like, why is it that
well,
some
there
other new person can join and make a comment and I won't take it that way? But then there's certain individuals where literally everything they say just stresses me out. I don't want to deal with it. Like I don't really understand that about myself. Like why is that happening? I don't get it.
I would if I had to guess, because I can get like that sometimes too. Um, there's a certain expectation where somebody, to a certain degree, and I don't know who Ping is, but to a certain degree, I would argue that you trust Ping enough because they have been around long enough to know better. But they still continue to act in a way that you frown upon. And so it becomes incredibly stressful when they should know better, whether they're trying to be jolly or not.
Well, but that's
Um,
the thing. Sometimes they're literally not doing anything wrong sometimes. Like it's one of those scenarios where when something was done wrong, I communicated quite directly and then things got better, but I had to do that so many times that now I'm fed up, but I don't really understand, like it's not really that much of a problem. So why do I feel so fed up by it? You know what I mean? Like I don't
if
I don't
if I
understand. So like
had to guess, it's probably just weariness of the person. Like you don't necessarily dislike them. You don't. I would hope so. But
No,
also at the
I don't
same
feel
time,
anger or resentment. It's just when they write comments, I
yeah,
literally like I'll be live streaming
you know,
and I'll be like
that's a
explaining
yeah.
something and then like there's this off the wall comment about something else and I read it and I forget what I'm talking about like completely and then like that experience happened to me so many times that like I don't know how to deal with it because it's like he's not really doing anything wrong, but he's constantly distracting me. And like he's not being mean, but he's causing me problems. But he's not
Yeah.
causing other people problems. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm like, I don't know. I don't. That's why I just blocked him myself personally, and I told him, it's like, look, you can keep talking to people here. That's fine as long as you don't fuck them over. But like, I'm blocking you on Discord because your comments just distract me. It's like it's frustrating, and
Yeah.
overall, it's not useful for me, right? But like, this conflicts with my desire to be very fair to people and to include people and to be able to hear criticism. You know what I mean?
I think
So like,
everyone I think everyone has a limit, you know what I mean? Like there are communities that I interact with where I have blocked hundreds of people in their discords. But every once in a while, you know what I mean? Like I'll go in there, I'll comment, I'll talk with people. So, I don't really I don't have a good answer for that. I would
yeah, I think
It's
maybe it's
different
just
because
being overwhelmed in general.
in my experience, The people that get under my skin the most are the people that they're the helpers, right? They know better, they know enough, and then they want to help. And because they try to help, they go out of their way to give mostly correct information. But the information that they're giving is very, very slightly incorrect. And so instead of going out of your way and ensuring that you're not speaking on things you don't understand, what ends up happening is like they're sitting there and they're talking about Atlas said one time, et cetera, et cetera. I can't stand the helpers. It's very frustrating to me because instead of just pointing somebody directly to what I said, here's a link, or here's what he said. What you get is they answer a question and then it starts off right. And then the person needs help again. And then they answer again. And then they give a slightly wrong answer. Those are the people that, for whatever reason, get under my skin. I don't have anything personally against them, but I find them to be so...
I think maybe it's the same for both of us, because basically it's people who cause us to have to spend time in a way that is counterproductive. Because what you just described is a situation where, okay, they're trying to help, but now you have to clarify that what they said is wrong, or like, and that also creates a whole other circumstance where you have to then kind of gauge whether you want to call them out or not call them out, and how to deal with that, and like all that stuff. You know what I mean? And Teensy, you are a real
the longer
helper.
you
You're
don't call them
helping.
out, the longer you don't call them out, the more of an issue it becomes.
Yeah.
And because it becomes more of an issue, then you have to spend more time. Yeah, that's what it is. It's the time sink, right? Because if you were just wrong and you left it at that, and I was like, hey, that's wrong, this is what, that would be completely different. But it's the fact that I know that you want to be funny, or you want to be helpful, or you want to be,
It's funny,
I think that's what it is.
I was definitely like that in Valheim world editing when I started learning about EWP. I would try and answer people's questions, but confuse them. And basically, like, eventually I got good enough at EWP that I stopped confusing people as much, and that stopped happening. But I definitely did that. So I can tell, like, I think everybody, it's just like when you want to help, but you don't have a really clear understanding about what the other person needs or what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's easy out of wanting to help to make things more confusing, and I will admit, I definitely do that sometimes when I try and answer questions that I shouldn't be answering.
My suggestion to anybody watching is never assume that other people know what you know. So no matter how dumb you have to start, always start with the dumbest question, right? Go full IT. Have you turned it on and off again, right?
Is it
because sometimes you will find people who they don't understand what they're talking about, and so they're using words that they don't understand. And again, what ends up happening is that
skipped a basic step.
You skipped, somewhere in the way, you skipped a very basic step. And what ends up happening is now I have to make that person understand, or somebody else has to make that person understand, the person you're trying to help, understand that they've already gone 10 steps ahead and they've broken something so fundamental. So for instance, one of the instances now that I'm remembering is there was a kid who wanted to make a mod, but he wanted to start by making a game start. But he had started by making a squad first in relation to Kenshi. And so normally that's not a bad thing, but what ends up happening is the fact that you then have to go in and attach a start to the squad, and you have to do all of these different things. Anyways, my point is like, he was in one of the discords and he was like, you know, how do I do this? And I'm like, well, you need to do this. And he was like, no, I've already skipped past that step. And I'm like, right, but you can't skip past that step. And a lot of people become frustrated because they believe that they're smarter than they are. So my suggestion genuinely is like, never assume anybody is as smart as you think they are, right? You could literally know a programmer who will start modding a game and then they will forget a basic step. And if you never ask about that basic step, what ends up happening is just like you'll never understand what's wrong. They'll never understand what's wrong. Yeah, it can be very, very frustrating. Like, genuinely, if you ever want to help people, go with the dumbest question. You know, go with the very basic. I had
up from the beginning.
Yeah, I had a guy in relation to the Valheim MMO project. I had a guy one time, he joined Gothalion server and he was like, he just said this and he said that and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, let's go all the way back to the beginning. And he refused to have the conversation. And I was like, listen, I'm like, I don't know where you messed up unless I can go back to the beginning. And he was like, well, I haven't messed up anything. And I'm like, okay, if you haven't messed up anything, then we wouldn't be in the, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Yeah, exactly. And he was like, well, you're treating me like I'm stupid, like I don't know how to do this, or like I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, I don't know if you're doing it the right way. Yeah. I'm not assuming you're smart enough because that's unkind. If we don't go back to the basics, it's very easy for both of us to just go, okay, he knows the basics. He's going to know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And eventually you're going to get to the point. You're going to get to the point where both of you are so frustrated that no further conversation can happen on that discussion. So never assume that anybody is as smart as you want them to be.
So you mentioned the adventure map MMO project again. So why don't we get back to that? Do you want to talk a bit about kind of what you want to do with it, how things are going, whatever is at the tip of your tongue, really, whatever you feel like.
So one of the larger questions is, I always get is when. I don't know, whenever it's ready. So before anybody asks that, I'll just say that.
Hey, they're used to Iron Gate. I think they'll understand.
Yeah.
Deep North 2029.
Yeah. At this point, that's what it's looking like. But one of the things that I was having a lot of difficulty with, ironically, is the modding community. I wanted a bunch of features for certain things. Certain modders said that they were going to do them. They were going to make a new mod, and then they never updated it. So I had to drop that mod. Other modders at the time were busy with real life events, and so I had to think about dropping their mod. And so what ended up happening was basically I just cut all the mods. As I was saying beforehand, I actually don't update the Valhalla Gothic mod pack anymore.
Just remind people again, the name you just said, Valhalla Gothic. This is the name of the MMO branch of the adventure map. Is that right?
More or less, yeah. I don't have a name for the project map per se, but yeah. It technically is the name of the mod pack, but considering you can't play the name, I mean, you can't play the map without the mod pack, then yeah. But yeah, so more or less, I got very frustrated trying to build the mods and trying to balance everything, because people started losing interest in the project. People started, big, cool new games are coming out. I'm also technically working out of Gothalion's Discord on the project. So, it's a streamer's Discord. They're not a Valheim streamer. They're a variety streamer. So they're going to play a new game. They're going to set up a server for that game. And then when the community is ready to move on, they move on, meaning that to some extent, the virality and the visibility of the project is mostly in relation to Gathalion, being interested in Valheim. And if he's not interested in Valheim, then the project doesn't get much, sight and visibility, which is I'm perfectly fine with. But it's one of those things where I would say the modding is the biggest issue, the biggest headache. So basically what I've been doing in my free time is, because again, like I was saying behind the scenes, is I have put, and I'm pretty sure I said it on stream, but I have put YouTube as my first priority. So that's comparing to all the other projects I'm in charge of and everything else that I've got going on, in the day to day, it's YouTube, and then, real life job, because, YouTube is pretty easy comparatively to, real life. So I do a bunch of YouTube stuff in the morning. I do a bunch of YouTube stuff when I get off of work. I do a bunch of YouTube stuff throughout the day, et cetera, et cetera. So that's pretty easy to prioritize. And then one of the other things is the projects come second. So my Genesis project comes second. The Valheim MMO, Valhalla Gothic, comes second. But in relation to that, I've basically just been chipping away at the map, adding cool new features, and I'm actually in the is it EWP, VWP Discord? I'm in Jer's Discord.
Valheim World Editing.
Yeah. I'm in Jer's Discord. So I actually, do a lot of research there. And if I run into an issue, I ask Dakar in DMs. But I have basically, I think now the adventure map released almost a year ago. And it's had a couple updates since then. I've basically just picked those updates and continued to work on the map behind the scenes, because so I mean, like if you were to open up your map right now on stream, just so people can get an idea of how big the map that I'm building is. I don't know if you can see the entire map, but I'm pretty sure that any of the places that you have been uncovered. If you were to uncover the entire map, you probably don't have that much landmass. And I think a lot of people think that Valheim is bigger than it is. But what I'm trying to do, so if you were to take basically everything in the middle, like everywhere the meadows is, that's the meadows. And then if you were to take everywhere that like the Black Forest is, like that's the Black Forest. Like that's how big the Black Forest will be. And there's plenty of like space to sail and rivers and reason to use boats and travel
kind of
and
like
blah blah blah.
You're in the Meadows continent. Now you're going to the Black Forest continent for your adventure. Now you're going to the swamp continent.
Kind of, yeah. But it's almost exclusively one giant continent.
Funny,
which is which is massive. You know what I mean? And that's not to say there aren't oceans to sail on, there aren't rivers to sail through, or ways to traverse the area, like loxes and stuff like that. But it's one of those things where the map is genuinely insanely big. It's insanely detailed. Like you'll be walking through a mountain range and have absolutely no idea that what you're walking on is actually technically a building. And if you were to go through the mountain, surprise, there's a city down there. Or there's a dungeon or anything like that. And so I want people to, when they play the game, I want them to genuinely get lost in the world, because I want them to enjoy the map with their friends. I want them to, even beyond the adventure map experience, which is amazing. I want there to be secrets. I want there to be, you know, dungeons you've never thought would exist. I want there to be, you know, stories that you can make that you never thought would happen in a quote unquote adventure map. You know, I want somebody to go, oh, I'm in Mistlin's gear. Why would I ever need to go back to the Meadows? And then somebody on the server's like, holy cow, you're never going to believe what kind of weapon I just found in this Meadows dungeon. And they're like, what Meadows dungeons? I've explored everywhere. And they're, well, yeah, actually, if you do this and then this, it's taken a lot of detail. It's taken a lot of work. And
It's like a reason to go back
I'm not
later, basically.
Yeah, I'm not trying to overhype the map. I'm just trying to give an idea of like how much work I am actually putting into this and will be putting into this by the time of its full release. I think one of the things that I was kind of excited about was getting it released before Ashlands, and then Ashlands came out and I ended up breaking the map. Or I should say, you know, Valheim ended up breaking the map. And so it was very, it was
generation change, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So for those of
and
you who are
it wasn't-
listening, the height map change in the Ashlands update made it so if you built anything in that area, it wasn't like, oh, you know, the area you didn't explore changed. It's like the height map was forced down. So if you built something in the pre-Ashlands, it's now floating like 15 meters up in the air, meaning that you're going to go to it and it looks fine, and then everything loads in and you get to watch it all fall apart in front of you. That was people's experience, basically. So that's what he's talking about.
And it was one of those things where like it's, and I don't know how much of the adventure map you have played, but some of the details are really intricate, right? So it was like the Thieves Guild that's on the in the adventure map. I wanted to use that as a placeable dungeon that people could technically use as like a base. And so what ended up happening was one of the features I had built was basically these are stash houses across the world. And then with some of the wards that we have, some of the ward mods that we have, you're able to lock down the access to the you know, hideout or whatever.
Yeah.
Because some of them were in the Ashlands and they're technically clones of each other, it broke some of the features because of how the world generation works and how I don't really technically fully understand it, but basically I had to go through and rebuild a bunch of them. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's taking a lot longer than usual because the mods that I originally wanted to use are either not getting updated anymore or they're not being technically maintained or they're incompatible with this. And so it's been very fun to continue on the world building side, but when it comes to the mod pack, I'm kind of apprehensive because I basically have to solo balance that around the map. And because of that, it makes me nervous to release the map without the core mods, which is like, you know, the MMO system and stuff like that. So it's put me in a predicament where
you're describing why I love EWP. Because all I have to do is rely on Yer, one person. And he tends to update, like, very quickly, let's say. Like, basically, Valheim gets a new update, Path of Magic has it within a day or two. Like, it doesn't...
Yeah.
It's what's so weird. Like, compared to regular modding, like, Yer's really, really, really reliable. And, like, as long as you just rely on his mods... So have you thought about doing that? Like, why not?
So the core of the map, the core of the map relies nearly exclusively on Year's mod and one other. I think there's because I have like EWP. I have something that makes I'm forgetting all the mods right now. One of them allows you to resize structures that aren't resizable. Another
Yeah,
one
structure
allows you
tweaks.
to, yeah, structure tweaks. Basically, the core of the map is Year's mods, which I'm not necessarily worried about breaking. Hence why I'm in his server. But there are also other core features
Like there,
that
I think like a class
I'm
system that was emphasized, right? I remember something about that
yeah,
in one of the
yeah.
videos I saw.
And that mod is no longer being maintained, and now it's being maintained by somebody else, and somebody else is rewriting it. But sometimes they update kind of slowly, and so it's one of those things where it's like
Yeah, it
I
could
kind of
work
stopped
now,
focusing
but
on the mods. Yeah, yeah.
that's problematic later. Yeah.
Um, so I would much rather delay the release of the map for the full release of Valheim, which sounds really dumb because, basically I'll be talking about
No,
this and
no,
working
that
on this
makes
project for
sense.
years. But, people are going to be like, when's the map out? And I'm going to be like, whenever the Deep North
Deep
drops.
North drops, yeah.
But I would like to do like incremental updates, like what Dakar and 9byte do. But the reality is like, one of the things that Dakar and 9byte did was they took these little like carts and they made them like kind of spawn points for goblin raids. So I took that idea even further and I made them POIs in the game. So now they spawn randomly in the map, right? So you have your core cities, but everything else about the map when you join it and you go to explore parts of the map is random, which was an
Sounds
incredible
cool.
pain in the ass because you have to realize I have to pre-generate the map and then I have to get stuff to respawn, right?
Yeah.
So the world is
Like
already
like
generated.
using like actually respawning it with like Upgrade World or something?
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
like
So it
okay.
kind of, which is why it requires so many of Jer's mods. So there are specific spots where they can spawn, right? Like they have spawn points. And so basically it's just like you either have an event that triggers them to spawn, which means that they randomize across the map over time. Or you have a initial spawn, which is also there's a couple of them, but basically it's part of a quest line, and then somebody may get a quest to go to like the Black Forest, and another person may get a quest to go to the mountain for different steps of the quest. That was very, very annoying to get to work. And then it's going to be even more annoying because what I want to do is have NPCs give those representative quests, meaning that I need the NPCs to do certain things in certain orders. Basically, I'm trying to make a game on top of a game.
Yeah, I feel you, man. That's yeah, we're in that world here and on this server. And like quests are something that with EWP, man, you can make some really, really deep, fascinating quests.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just like people haven't had enough time really, and people don't really know much about EWP. So I mean, maybe it'll be this project you're working on. It'll at some point people are gonna play some things and then get more used to how powerful EWP is, because it's just like what 9byte and Dakar were able to do with the adventure map, that didn't even use EWP. So like the main, just for those of you listening, like with the other methods that are vanilla friendly, you can do similar things to what EWP does, but the amount of time it takes to maintain them and to change them across the world is exponentially more. It's incredibly time consuming because you have to actually go into the world file, find the object, look at its field like manually. Whereas when you have EWP scripts like in Enigma, like I don't need to log into the server to adjust the data in Enigma mode. I just look at the file. But in the old school methods, you couldn't really do that. You had to like the file is the world file and all the game objects and their
Yeah.
fields, and like it can be really time consuming. So I know it's inevitable that at some point EWP will like really catch on, but probably not until some big streamer like focuses on an EWP project, you know, and that's when people will really
Yeah.
start to understand what's possible. But who knows when that's gonna be?
Yeah, it's one of those
2029.
things where it you you kind of want the biggest and the best mods that don't have a lot of exposure to get exposure, but also at the same time, like as a modder myself, I also understand I kind of don't want it to get exposure because, you know, I want to be the person who
Yeah, who blows
knows
it open.
everything and learns
Yeah.
everything, and you know, feel like the wizard. Dakar will always be that for person for EWP and Infinity Hammer and whatnot, but it's always funny to me because it's just one of those things that you're like, wait, hold on. I'm barely staying on top of what's being made now. If the community gets any bigger than this and we have more wizards come in, I'm gonna lose
Yeah.
my mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a good point, that showing it like basically people have to see the EWP projects in action, basically, and that's
Yeah.
what draws some of them in. But also for that to even happen in the first place, like there has to be demand for Valheim overall. You know what I mean? And that's like
Yeah.
that's where figuring out when it happens exactly. Like how do you feel about the launch of Valheim? What do you think's going to happen when they draw? Okay, let me frame this more specifically. What how are they going to handle 2026? When is 1.0 going to come out, and when is the PlayStation release going to come out, and what's going to happen? What do you think?
So I think, okay, so if the PlayStation release comes out, I don't think it's going to impact the community per se all that much, because you're comparing, you know, vanilla Valheim to normal Valheim or modded Valheim projects, right? So
Yeah.
for the vanilla community, you just get more people, right? You're talking more people talking about the game, more people talking about, you know, exposure to it, people streaming it on PlayStation, people, you know, more people streaming it because they can get people to watch it. So the community grows, and that's a good thing, which means that, you know, content creators will have more people to go out of their way and watch their videos. So I think Valheim creators will get an uptick, which means more eyes on projects, which means more ability to it's so interesting because when it comes to modding, it's like it's almost like the growth of a community doesn't actually do anything for the mod itself per se, but what actually happens is you almost exclusively need like one person to promote more or less the mod or modding scene. It's I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for words because
It sounds like you're
a
trying
bigger
to
community does.
articulate that there's a separation between the
Yeah,
growth
there's
of the game and the mod projects. So do you want to
yeah,
elaborate
there's a
more
good
about that?
amount of there's a good amount of separation, but also at the same time, you know what I mean? Like it's like how do you predict the future? Basically, you know, the community get bigger, which is better for everybody. You know, more community, more people, more eyes. You know, more reason for them to continue pushing on with updates and tweaks and balance patches and et cetera, et cetera. But also at the same time, like that doesn't necessarily affect the modding scene in the way that you think it does, right? Like a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, like if you were like, the Deep North update will bring, you know, 200 million people to Valheim on PC, it would be a different it would be a different ask. But even if you were to bring 10 million people on PlayStation, you're not necessarily talking about anything that will impact PC players when it comes to modding. So I can't say much will change for projects going forward other than the average update, you know, breaking mods. But at least when it comes to a healthier community, I would argue that that might, you know, end up happening. The community is going to get larger. You're probably going to have, you know, a certain amount of people who are going to push back against the average, you know, I've been here forever, et cetera, kind of veteran. I don't know why I just threw that.
Yeah, I realized that you're not in God mode, so the cold will kill you. So I gave you some warmth.
Yeah, I was thinking about it earlier, and I was like, you know what? Should I just come in with Infinity Hammer enabled? And um, but yeah, it's interesting because I'm trying to like rationalize through the difference of like how the community will interact. Um, you know, it's like how many, because I don't know much about PlayStation. Not to say that I haven't played PlayStation, but also it's like how much of the community do you think on PlayStation specifically will actually go out of their way and join the larger community outside of something like Reddit? How many potential Valheim PlayStation players are you going to have? You know, which would give you an idea for PC players, or at least PC metrics like YouTube and content creators and blah blah blah. So yeah, it's such an interesting question.
Yeah, it's not really something anyone can answer with certainty, so don't worry. I think it has to do with the kind of life cycle of any player, right? Like when they first join, even if they're on computer, which you know is theoretically quite easy to mod compared to, you know, crossplay modding is a thing, but most people don't know how to do it, and most people don't know it's possible, and it can only be done
Yeah.
by using a vanilla-friendly server that the console connects to, right? So like we know about this, but most people don't, and it will take some time. But so okay, that's more about like what will happen when Deep North. So what do you think about the timing? So I know what people in my audience tend to think, and I actually had a I it's funny, whenever I take these polls, my answer is always like the least popular answer. And I'm like, God damn.
Yeah.
But when do you think, so first off, when do you think they'll launch 1.0? If you're like trying to bet on when and be accurate, not be optimistic.
If I'm being super optimistic, I would like to say 2026, but later in the year. Because I think what they're going to do, right? So if we're talking just completely 1.0, I think that'll happen with Deep North. And I think if they release Deep North, let's say late next year, then I think over the course of the next 2 years after that, what you will see is a follow up of couple updates, right? So you're talking this. I know a lot of people talk about like the ocean biome update or whatever. A lot of people talk about, they feel like some of the new updates are, um, they have too much foliage, too much this, too much that, compared to older, biomes, like the meadows or whatever.
Yeah.
And so people are expecting them to go back and kind of polish and clean everything up. Um, and I think that'll happen 2027, 2028, right? Like, I think we'll still continue to get updates for quite a while. But 1.0, I would say maybe next year, late next year. If I'm being super pessimistic, then maybe, 2 years away. Because
Don't
I
break
think
their
to some
hearts.
degree, yeah,
I think you might.
I
You
think
could be
to,
right. To be honest,
I think to
like
some
we never
degree,
know with Iron Gate.
I think Iron Gate is kind of, they're looking to be done with the project. Not necessarily done with the project as like a series, as a franchise, as a, IP, but they're looking to be done with Valheim as it is now, because maybe they want to make Valheim 2, and they want to change how they do things, right? Um, I
Yeah,
don't know what's
I
going
would
on behind
say
the scenes,
no.
but yeah.
I think you're probably accurate there because if you listen to the interviews that they've done, that's the general attitude. Is like, I mean, they've been asked specifically about the networking and if they would redo it, and the answer was basically like, we would redo that in a game like not this one, basically. So
Yeah,
they were like,
yeah,
no. And also Grimm's made comments, and they've also made comments like they shared that situation about the bat and how like the bat was the last time they had felt inspired, and like you can tell there's very much a lack of direction, a lack of momentum, and people want to finish so they can move on to other projects and other things.
yeah.
Which I mean, for me that was really sad to start to see, because I used to be very optimistic about Iron Gate in general, but then I came to realize it's like I should probably be realistic so that I don't keep letting myself down. Because I really was like I was one of those people before Ashlands who thought that Ashlands was gonna come out, and then all those people who like had stopped playing and said that they're gonna play when the next biome comes out, they're gonna come back, and then there's gonna be this big wave of players, and I knew it wouldn't be like in COVID, but I thought it would, like, all right, here's the guts of it. All updates are gonna have a big spike that then mostly drops off. The success of the
Yeah.
update has little to do with the spike. It has to do with the new baseline, the new lowest point after the spike. So in a game that's growing, you'll get a huge spike, and then 95% of that spike vanishes. But you get that 5% more on the baseline.
Yep. Yep.
Valheim has not experienced that. I hate to, be the constant bearer of this bad news to people, but it just hasn't. Like, if you look at the analytical growth for Valheim, it's up by like, the baseline has changed by like a couple percentage points, and the vast majority of Valheim's growth, like, it hasn't really grown its baseline that much since over 4 years ago. So, like, there's a lot of issues with the game, and like I don't mean to be pessimistic at all.
It's
For me, it's
performance. It literally the game would be as fucking universal as it possibly could if the performance for building stuff was not so damn bad. Like, this is like, I forgot how to, what is it? Is it F1? F2?
yeah,
F2.
F2.
I'm running, you know what I mean? I'm running 2,300 instances right now with you, me, and I'm assuming some kind of admin or something like that. Like, I'm literally sitting here and I'm getting, you know, way more data sent and way more data received than I should be for connecting to a server. My FPS is dropping between 30 FPS to 157. First and foremost, how is that my range? How is that my range,
Yeah.
right? We're talking anywhere between 3 milliseconds of lag time for my frames to 22 milliseconds of lag time for my frames. Again, how is Valheim this laggy? How is Valheim this unperformant? And that's not to say like I don't understand, you know what I mean, Unity and et cetera, and blah, blah, blah. And indie game studio. And I'm not saying like you can't give some passes here, right? But what I am saying is like it doesn't make sense that I remember in an interview, I think it was like they had said Iron Gate had said that they did multiplayer way too soon. And because they did it way too soon, they got sick of hearing, everything about it. And it's one of those things where it's like, hearing from everyone about it. But it's one of those things where it should have been just like, you know what, you guys are right. Let's remove networking, even if it pisses off a small core group of people, right? And even if like PC had to rely on Steam connection or whatever it's called, the Steam variant of, the networking, because Steam has a pretty decent set.
Yeah,
But what
like
they
Play
did
Fabs
was
and
they tried
whatever.
to connect. Yeah, they tried to connect Steam to their own networking stuff, and it's just I don't know. It's such a bad experience because it's one of those things where it's like to this day, right? To this day, you can still have people in multiplayer die just from sailing boats. And it's one of those things where it's like that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like that shouldn't be happening. I will never, ever, a day in my life, ever ride with somebody in a boat in Valheim. I just won't. It makes me absolutely nauseous to look at the screen. There's no way something should be that laggy, that unperformant.
I mean, with the up and downness with the ships in multiplayer.
The it's like desync, and you'll have players who like they're it looks like they're in one spot, but they're actually in another. And then at the same time, you're getting thrown this way and that way, but they're getting thrown that way and then this way. And the whole experience is I could deal with everything else. I could even overlook everything else, as we were talking about earlier. The experience on boats is so bad. It has actually made me physically ill before. Like that's how bad it is. And I'm not a person who gets nauseous at watching people, be woozy or anything like any of those effects. You know what I mean? Like Minecraft nausea gives me a bit of a headache, but I don't know, man. Like something about the boats in Valheim just.
It sounds like maybe you're in a similar situation to me, because I don't have I live in Nicaragua, so I have a less reliable internet pathway whenever I play Valheim in multiplayer. So my experience in multiplayer in Valheim has always been one where the multiplayer, like I can't play the same when there's another person there. I have to, in my head, double or triple the hitbox of all the enemies. So, like,
Right.
I've had a similar experience as you, but at the same time, I've talked to people, and I know that there are people who have had good experiences. So, it, like, I think what is really going on is that, like, it's just not, Valheim is like a project that, it's like the same kind of thing I did when I started learning EWP. I was making something to learn. I didn't start
Yeah.
it knowing how to make it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, because of that, I guess their attitude is like, oh, if we rework it, we may as well just make a new game. But I also don't really understand. And like, I don't know. For me, I'm not trying to like make any points or anything. I just try and
Yeah.
understand
Just
the
trying to have a
mentality
conversation.
behind it. Yeah, exactly. And like, the thing that I don't get is like, why is there so little dedicated this is the weird thing about Iron Gate. Like, there's a lot of things that are like, oh, this is what they believe. Like, oh, it's a cooperative, sandbox survival game. But then
Yeah.
when you talk about inventory, like, oh no, it's an item management survival game. It's like, but
Right.
isn't it a building sandbox game? It's like, no, not in this case. In this case, it's this. And it's like, there's a lot of that kind of logic where, like, okay, so we're encouraging players to play by having the world consume itself. All the trees get destroyed, all the rocks get destroyed, the dungeons not respawn, so that players explore? Like, don't players just want to explore anyway? Like, is this
Right.
really
But
making
it's
them
also like
explore?
if you think
I
about
don't
it,
get it.
in their own game setting, it doesn't make sense, right? Because this is the midway point to test us before we get into Valhalla, right? Valheim is supposed to be, according to their game lore, the midway point to test us to get into Valhalla or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's
So
like the purgatory, essentially. Yeah.
why would Odin let us destroy this world? Like it doesn't, like, none of it. I don't know. It's frustrating to think about.
Yeah, I understand. But also at the same time, I think that's what kind of makes it so fun to work on. You know, there's this vacuum of things that haven't been done, or like space that hasn't been used, or something that gets, made in a certain way. It's funny you mentioned the instance count earlier, actually, because so right now this isn't vanilla instance generation. It runs like, and it has to do actually with optimizing for an MMO. But basically, in this Enigma project, I've had this mentality where I realized, like what you're saying, that Valheim was designed to be a LAN game that you play with people in the same room as you on good computers.
Yeah.
That's it. It
Yeah.
is not meant to work outside that context. So if you think about that in reality, then that means that there's things we can do to better optimize it, right? So then my mentality with Enigma is like, okay, I just have to accept Valheim networking as what it is. And Valheim networking, if you go into like the Black Forest, it has 6,500, 7,500 instances. And I used to get derailed from this because I knew, like, okay, just because it's an instance, it's not the same. A monster is way more expensive than a tree, for example, which is true. But
Yeah. Yeah.
ultimately, what I can change is the number of instances. So that's actually something that the Enigma project does. So it gets rid of like 60 to 90% of the instances and replaces them with big versions, just like if you play World of Warcraft and you look at the trees.
Yep.
You ever wonder why the tree is like the size of a skyscraper, and like it doesn't make any sense at all if you think about it? Like, why
Yep.
are these forests so big? And it's like, it's because it's an effective way to do a multiplayer game world, because you can make people feel small with as few instances as possible. So like there's all these techniques you can apply from other games, and like that's kind of like what I'm trying to do with this project, is like make a point by showing what can be done with what's already in the game. Makes sense? Because it's like when you mod
Yeah.
something, you could fix the networking, but that doesn't show Iron Gate that they can use what they're doing more effectively necessarily. But like I have this dream that someday my project or someone else's project that's vanilla friendly will get so popular that like they're playing it at Iron Gate or something, and hiding that they're
Yeah.
playing it
Yeah.
because they don't want to tell anybody. Like that's the dream.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of treating people
Yeah.
well and sharing and encouraging to do before
It
that's
is.
gonna happen.
It is. I'll say this because I've been in the Kenshi community for so long, and my project became so big. I have developer versions of Kenshi. I can access everything the developers can. It is in fact like my community that is working on like a script extender for Kenshi, basically a plugin that digs into the code and forces openings into the code that allows you to inject like new things. Um,
Sort of
but
like
yeah,
UWP a
it's
bit.
yeah, kind of like that. Like you're able to do so much more. Um, and Kenshi is like even compared to Unity projects, Kenshi is very, very closed off. The developers were like, "Yeah, you can't mod music," and then we were like, "Watch." So it's stuff like that where it's like the developers weren't being unkind. The developers weren't, you know, trying to like tell people not to do something. They were saying like we think it's impossible, and to most people
Yeah,
it
no, I see what you
was.
mean.
You know what I
Uh-oh.
mean? And then
Oh,
we cracked the code. Um, and so it's one of those things where it's like I get what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like it would be so, and it is genuinely so humbling to have a developer message you and give you feedback on your mod, which is absolutely hilarious to me because that's actually happened to me. And in the Kenshi community, I know most of to a certain extent of the developers that I know personally. I know most of them have played my mod. Most of them like my mod. Most of them have given me feedback on my mod. I have had the developers of the game help me develop my mod. Like that is a humbling experience when you realize, you know, there are certain questions they can't answer, but then they'll give you a little bit of insight and you're like, okay, okay, I'm going to use that. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean,
I would
one would
love
always,
for you to elaborate a bit. So, for those of you listening, let me just articulate basically a difference that I've just noticed. So, he's been talking about Kenshi and that scene, which is another game, right? Meanwhile, we have Valheim, and we've been kind of comparing some of the modding dynamic in one and the other. And one thing that's immediately apparent is like, okay, you're working on Kenshi mods, and you have a direct relationship with the developers.
right.
Like, is that even possible in the Valheim modding scene? Are there
Um,
are there modders
oh,
who
so yes, yes, absolutely. Yes. Yep. There is one particular person in a particular server who makes a couple hundred to $1,000 off of a totally not paid mod that's completely changing the scene, that has multiple developers in their server and has direct relationships with their server, which is why their totally not paid mod is again, remember, it's a totally not paid mod, which is against Iron Gate's rules. It goes under the radar.
messy, very messy.
Yeah. And it's that's not to say like their project is unimpressive. That's not to say like they don't deserve that kind of recognition. Now I don't know, because Iron Gate has a publisher, Kenshi does not, or Valheim has a publisher and Kenshi does not. So I don't necessarily know if, for instance, those Iron Gate would be so willing to give over like a developer version of Valheim to said modder or said modder friend group or whatever. But I just happened to be in a position where I knew somebody who had the tool, and I happened to be looking through the tool and talking to the original developer, and we were how do I even okay. So the Kenshi developers reached out to a YouTuber and gave him a branch version of the developer version of Kenshi. Um, and he reached out to me because he thought it would be a useful tool because we were working on the script extender. So I reached out to Lo-Fi and explained how I got the tool, explained how I knew about the tool, et cetera, et cetera. And basically I put myself in the crosshairs, and they were like, yeah, we trust you. And I was like, all right, cool. But also I had built a personal relationship with the developers. So
I
a
guess
little bit
so.
of drama.
That's what I was more trying to get at. It's not so much that Iron Gate gives some branch of something to someone. It's more that like um maybe this is just my opinion, but whenever I hear the Iron Gate employees talk about mods, like it really seems like they have almost no idea what's going on in the modding scene. Like they don't pay much attention to it. That like
Well, I mean,
that's
you have
been
to realize
my perspective. I
they're
don't know if that's true.
they're a maybe when they started they were a indie studio. I would say they're closer to a double A indie studio now, right? With the amount of money, the team members, and that's not to say their team members have grown that much, but the difference is um at least between the Kenshi and Valheim community, is with the Kenshi community, we have always had direct lines to the developers. And it was ironically the community who built the community. But when it comes to something like Valheim, this is before, or this is after like the communities of the time. You have Discord. So Iron Gate makes a Discord, or the publisher made a Discord or whoever, and then you put the developers in there and you're like, hey, look at these pretty shiny developers, and then you get some moderators, and then you're like you're like the only ping the moderators, don't ping the developers. The developers will announce stuff when they have stuff to announce. So I mean, even to some extent, like I would assume that the moderators are kind of removed from the developers. That's not to say like there aren't people who don't have relationships. Who was the developer who got hacked? I basically was in his DMs for one of the Valheim devs. The Valheim server got hacked, and I was in the guy's DMs basically running him through like security measures on his PC, and like literally just in this guy's DMs. I think it's the community manager, explaining how to ensure there were no viruses and blah, blah, blah. And it was just like everybody else was like, oh my God, the server got hacked. And genuinely, I think the best thing I could say is just treat people like people. You know what I mean? Like that's a person. And that's not to say like they, some of them don't have good reasons of, rules of separation. Like one of the stories I was going to say is the reason me and the developers got so close is partially because at the time they were interested about Unreal support for modding. And so we held a developer / modder support kind of discussion for the Kenshi, for Kenshi. And then somebody ended up stealing my mod. And it turned into this huge drama. The person got banned from Reddit. The person got banned from Steam. The person got banned from both the community Discord and the official Discord. It got to the point where, like, they had naked children in their mod. They were threatening to sue the developers. Genuinely, like, Jesus. It was probably one of the most. Yeah, it was drama. And yet at the whole heart of it was the fact that they had stolen my mod, and I had asked them for credit. I had asked them to re-credit because my mod is built off of other mods. It is reliant on the goodwill of other modders allowing me to use their mods in mine. So it was one of those things where like it was just it blew up. We had developers cross-referencing. Like I literally just was like, here's my Discord account, here's my YouTube account, here's my email. Like I was just handing everything over to them, and in relation to that, they're going through everything that they need to in case this guy really does sue them. which it was over a really stupid reason. He never was going to sue, but just because like I was so open with them and they were caught in the crossfire over some really stupid modding drama. You know what I mean? Like, don't steal my shit and we're not going to have any problems. Or if you do steal my shit, at the very least, credit me and credit the other people. And then we can fuck off. And he was like, no, I'm too good for that, blah, blah, blah. You don't know anything about me. F you, blah, blah, blah. All right, whatever. So, yeah, I think people are just shocked that they can talk to people because they're people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you see a
it must
celebrity
be
on the
hard
street.
as a game developer, right? Because you have the players, and especially once there's lots of players, you know. So I definitely I don't want to come across as too harsh on Iron Gate, because I definitely can. But one of the reasons that I am harsh on Iron Gate is because it's not just Iron Gate, it's also the players. And when you run a game project, it doesn't, I get it, you know, they're people. But at the same time, I hold the developers of a project to a different standard than the people and the players. Yes, we can understand them, but ultimately, what I've learned from this, my takeaway, is that if you run a game, you have to have, face. You have to be able to connect with the community. If you hide from them, it makes everything horrible, and it creates the very situation that makes a developer want to hide from the community. You know what I mean? And I find it amusing that I know the way I work. Once I speak with somebody, it's very challenging for me to criticize them. Literally, I will then defend them. It doesn't take much at all. And I see how, really, it's not that I really feel bad about Iron Gate. It's that I feel that Iron Gate is disconnected from the players, and I don't understand. And
Oh,
that
absolutely.
confuses me, you know what I mean? So how do you think you can prevent that from happening? Let's say one makes a game studio, and one finds themselves going down that direction, where your players are starting to be disconnected. Imagine you're in Iron Gate's shoes, but it's not Iron Gate. Let's imagine it's something else, so it's less personal, right? What would you do to make sure that you have that connection with the players and that they feel that, you know, they can reach out to you? Because I don't, maybe this is just my opinion, but for Iron Gate, at least how it is now, I feel like they have people whose job it is to be the social media managers, but I do not feel like there's transparency or it's weird. I don't feel like I have any idea what's going on, even though, they said in the Ashlands era that they were going to, you know, involve us and show us what's happening. And, instead we get these, 1-minute cartoons that are made by, an animation studio that is really awesome. But, I mean, you could give us 10-minute cartoons, maybe. You know what? Is it really that much? Think about it. They stretched a 10-minute cartoon over a year. I just don't understand. How? I don't get it. Sorry. You can respond now. I got too emotional there.
I think no, you're good. I was just I was coughing out a lung real quick. But I think comparatively, if you were to look at something like for instance, RuneScape, old school RuneScape, right?
Yeah, night and day community relationship. Holy shit.
Right. But also there's another game out there where I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's called Warframe. And they do weekly streams. They answer questions from the chat, which has led to some very funny trolling moments. Hilarious, but you know, insensitive, but funny. There's also a point where they went to the video game awards, and the community manager bragged about having 4 million losers sign up to the game or something like that, but what she meant to say was users, but everybody started calling each other losers. They were like, "Oh, you play Warframe, you're a loser. Oh, you play Warframe, you're a loser." So every time there's like a new milestone, the community goes, "New losers, new losers." But also, like, that's a game where, for reference, you can earn the premium currency for free. Everything is a player-driven economy. So you can play the game because somebody out there is a bit of a whale and they're going to buy all of the currency that they want so they can get all the items that they want so that they can then sell them at a higher price system? At a later date. Yeah, it's...
Yeah, okay. So for those of you listening, because I also love old school RuneScape, I have learned, though, that my audience in general, some of them know about old school RuneScape, but a lot of people actually don't. So basically, to take a step back and to give you all some more context to what he's talking about, the way Jagex, first off, they're a bigger company, definitely a bigger company. The way they manage the old school RuneScape project is like completely the polar opposite of the way Iron Gate manages, in the sense that, like, Jagex has regular live streams where the moderators who like actually like deal with things like show their faces. They're a huge influential part of the history of the game. Like, I mean, there's loads of YouTube videos about like the history of each JMod and what they've contributed and what they worked on and the dramas. They literally become part of the game in a very intimate way compared to other development studios. And they don't have just some like outsourced team. So they're very public facing, and like especially like the recent update, I think, is the most effort I've ever seen Jagex put, because they didn't just get like Google ads. They actually reached out to individual YouTubers to get them to make videos and mention sailing, which I thought was really, really interesting. I actually didn't go back and play, but it's interesting seeing how much more public facing they are.
We had the rework of the rework of the rework of Great Corrend, and that included like farming and all of these different features over there. And it so just for reference to anyone who's listening, sailing is built the way it is built in RuneScape currently because of a guy named Gentle Tractor. Gentle Tractor, for anybody who's curious, is a fucking Redditor. That's it. He's a dude on Reddit. That's the entire point. So a bunch of the greatest reworks we have of old school RuneScape at their current time were developed because the community supported the ideas from a guy named Gentle Tractor so much that the developers were like, okay, we'll work with Gentle Tractor to put these ideas into the game. And just for reference, in case anybody who is like, oh, well, how does that work? We vote every week. We have a new poll, and if anything fails, there's a couple things that the developers keep trying to push on us, and we keep saying no to.
That away eventually,
but yeah. So, but one of the things is like they're super, because they understand, like, if they piss off the community, the game dies. If the game dies, the company literally will go under, because it's not the microtransaction ridden hellscape that RuneScape 3 is that's making all the money. Yeah. It's the old school. It's the one where the players...
They already learned all those lessons. I think Jagex is one of the only gaming companies that I've come to lose complete and absolute faith in every single game studio I ever knew growing up.
Yeah.
Jagex is the only one that actually regained my faith in them. Because of how they
but they also
they it's just
they got their ass beat with RuneScape 3 and then
but they actually learned from it. I mean, they could have just kept going and never even given OSRS a chance, and You know, especially now, there's all this gambling and stuff, and there's other ways to like
Yeah,
addict people. They could have gone down that path, you know. But they didn't. Well, at
they.
least
I think
they
what's
learned
even
from it. They
funnier
came back.
is now they're talking about removing microtransactions from RuneScape 3,
Yeah, I heard about that.
which is insane. You know what I mean? But to what I was saying earlier is like there are game companies out there like that, like Warframe, which I was, what I was talking about. They had a mechanic that basically was gambling for the skin color of one of your pets. Um,
Like
and
CS:GO skins, sort of something similar.
basically, so the idea is you get a pet and it can have certain fur patterns. And let's call it a dog, right? This dog, it can be a Dalmatian, it can be a German Shepherd, it can be a Chihuahua, it can be, right? So you have all these different quote unquote skins. What they wanted people to do was to get with their friends and breed cool looking dogs because it would randomly match like certain patterns and ear tips and tail types and blah blah blah. What they realized was that they allowed players to buy certain genetic samples, which allowed players to basically gamble. And the only reason that they realized it is because of one guy. One guy, in the span of a week after the first update dropped, he had spent over $10,000 on and you can Google this. Look up
No,
yeah.
yeah, it's the tragic history of what led to microtransactions. It's more
Yeah.
profitable to
So
destroy a
but
game's image through
but here's
catering to whales.
but here's the funny thing. They refunded everything and took the system out.
Ooh.
They didn't like it so much, despite the fact that they could have made millions and millions of dollars off of this very clearly, if people were willing to pay for it. They disliked the system so much. They have premium skins which you can buy, which are like $5. So you can directly buy the German Shepherd skin. Or you can breed the type of dog that you want, but only with other friends. So it's completely based on your relationship with other players, meaning that the players are in charge of like the genetic samples and blah, blah, blah. And so the company doesn't earn any money off of it. They completely changed the system and then refunded the guy. And so it's stuff like that where it's like, how do you as a person, let's say you want to make, going back to the original question, how do you have to integrate the community into everything you do, meaning that if you want a layer of separation, you have to integrate the community into that layer of separation, right? So one of the things that I was talking about earlier is like the community mods for Kenshi, the community admins, they were there since the beginning. And so when the Kenshi team needed to separate, they put the community in between, right? And because people already trusted these community members because they had been helping for years, the community members were able to, not only push away criticism against them, but also push away criticism against the developers that were unfair. And so it's one of those things where the developers were able to focus on the game, focused on finishing the game. And when the game was finished, they were like, hey, we're going to make Kenshi 2. And now they're able to focus on Kenshi 2. And that's not to say like they don't pop in every once in a while and they're like, haha, crabs. And we make crab memes for the rest of the month, which is really annoying. But, it's one of those things where it's just like, it's very clear that if you don't involve your community and you don't have good communication with them, Chris, the developer of Kenshi, the lead developer of Kenshi, he said that, in an interview with some Spanish website. I read everything related to that man. So, anyways, he's like an enigma. But he had said that one of his biggest failures was he had put so much time into development that because he was working solo on this project, he had put so much time into development that he had forgot about communication multiple times. And so like this is a game, before it was ever called early access, it was called Steam Greenlight. And like he was game one of three who got approved for Steam Greenlight or early access before it ever became like a full, scale program that you could just release your games early access. And
Yeah.
so it was one of those things where just like Steam came up with this system, he was chosen, and then he would regularly ghost people for like months. But it wasn't because he wasn't working on the game. It was because he was working on the game so hard he forgot that he had a fucking community that was growing steadily. And so he said that one of the best decisions he ever made was he turned around to the people that were always there, answering questions, talking about him, talking to him, sending him emails, basically being the community admins already. He was like, I'm going to give you like official login privileges, and I want you guys to like be the representatives. And they came up with ideas, and they helped him, collect suggestions and feedback and play test. And because of that, because he included them, one of them actually now has a job at the company, now that they're working on Kenshi 2. Another one has, he basically is the de facto community admin now. So much so that the developers actually go to him for permission, which is weird. But he has a pretty good job. So he's like, I do.
Because those people are all passionate,
Yeah.
And finding
Yeah.
a good team and good employees is incredibly challenging. Most people don't really care about their work, even if they end up doing a job that other people might
Yeah.
like. So, like, that's another thing that I get confused about because in my head, you have a game, and then that will form a community like a shadow and light, like it's inevitable. And that community will surface some of the most like passionate and dedicated people to that game world because it surfaces people who do it purely out of passion, not for money. So like in my head, you make a project, you then recruit the community. Like I don't understand why that like that seems very simple, like, right? You would want to get a close relationship, but again, like I'm probably oversimplifying just how hard it is to like deal with all the stress from millions and millions of people commenting and saying things, and they know about you and they know your name and they want to ask you things, like I can see how that would make one just be like, fuck this, I don't want it anymore.
Yeah, it's ironically speaking on the opposite end of that. So again, like I was saying earlier, I'm actually the community manager for a indie team, for a game, and we have a we have a publisher. And so it's one of those things where it's like the publisher came in after they had struck the deal with the developers, and I was the one who had basically up until that point done the market research, done the promoting, done the ad runs, done the ad campaigns out of my own pocket, being in the position that I'm in, and then at the same time, I had put effort into building the community, put effort into building, sub communities, because again, the developers are South Korean. They speak Korean. I'm English. I'm American. I speak English. I speak a little bit of Spanish, but I can read a lot of languages. So basically I would help translate and proofread. And luckily I didn't have to do any of the development side of things, but I criticized the art. I gave feedback. I, gave suggestions. I helped with direction and style and naming conventions and wording and, pluralisms and analogies. And so also at the same time, they want to learn English. So I'm helping teach them English, and they're helping teach me Korean. And so it's one of those things where it's like, everybody always asks, when are you going to get paid for it? And it's like, well, Technically, they send me gifts all the time. I've received candy from them multiple times. I've received gift bags and goodies. And anytime they go to a convention, they send me, a bunch of stuff from the convention. So I'm like, I don't necessarily do this for the money, right? The agreement between me and the developers is the
Societal
agreement between
pressure.
yeah
It's the
was
worst.
was an agreement between me and the developers. And so one of the things that um I try to make people understand is it's like, this isn't just me being the community manager. Like, this is also me forming connections. I now know three CEOs of three separate publishing companies, because we have gone through those talks with those people. I now have relationships where I didn't have relationships before, meaning that if I want to get into the gaming industry or I want to help people, developers themselves, I now have the resources and the knowledge base and the people and the connections directly with these people. Just recently, I was talking with a developer who was looking for a publisher, and now she's in talks with a publisher because I set her up with the publisher. And so far, it looks like their criteria is going to meet everything that they need. And they're helping, the publisher is looking to help them get on PlayStation and Xbox. I actually would have to check in on that to make sure I'm saying the right thing. But it's stuff like that where it's like, I'm not saying like you should, be in a position where, if you're like Iron Gate and you can hire somebody who cares and loves about the community, do so, right? But also, you can kind of just let people assist you, right? Not everything has to be a monetary transaction. Not everything has to be reciprocal. And I think that's kind of what the Kenshi developers found out is if they let the community kind of, take care of itself to a
Yeah,
certain
if you let
extent,
people be more
right?
involved.
Yeah. Then what ends up happening is the community becomes more tight knit. And that doesn't mean you're not going to have people fighting. In fact, it means more like they're going to be like, mom, more often. But in reality, that does mean that you have a healthier community. Um, yeah, it's interesting because I'm on both sides of that equation, right? Like I have people who, um, they at me, they literally ping me every single time they have a question about anything. Um, and sometimes I'm like, oh, well, blah, 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 here's the answer. And other times I'm just like, I don't know. I'll go and ask though. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's funny you mention that though, because so now that I've been more involved in the server management community and know other people who really like work on Valheim projects, something I've thought is interesting is that my motivations for working on the project seem to be quite different than other people's. Um, and I don't fully understand why more people don't think of it the way I do, which is that it's quite literally like a game design education in a time where game design experience, actual playtesting experience, managing players is traditionally very expensive to acquire. Like to get
Yep.
4 or 5 years under your belt of you made something and you witnessed other people playing it. Like if you do traditional game design, you got to be in the industry for like a decade before you can even start to do that kind of shit. It's incredibly expensive to get that experience. And so like from my perspective, that's why EWP is so insane because it's like you can come up with a mechanic like okay, you'll understand this because you play old school RuneScape. Okay, I've always admired Slayer in RuneScape because I found how it sends the player all over the world and you end up going to places because I would always do Conors and I really liked the key system. So
Yeah.
basically, if the others listening, if you haven't played RuneScape, there's this skill that you can develop that's basically like, hey yo, go kill 50 fire giants over here in this cave. And so then
Yeah.
you go over into that cave and it sends you all around the world killing different monsters, and there's other stuff to it, but that's the basics, right? So I was like, well, in Valheim, the world itself in Valheim is beautiful. Just like the dungeon
Yeah.
generation's really good. The problem is the reward system for the world in Valheim. So I was like, well, maybe if we can add more systems. And from the moment that happened, 2 weeks later, I had a fully functioning Slayer system in Valheim, just built with Expand World Prefabs, working a couple hours a day. And it's like,
Yeah.
you just can't develop anything that quickly normally. That's why these
Yeah.
like scripting languages, they just take so much of the cognition and the worries away so that you can just focus on like the game design and witnessing players do things. And so like for me, I have a similar attitude to you. Like the whole like Valheim alone isn't really an incredible game. It's not a masterpiece to me until you add
Yeah.
a community element and something like EWP. Then suddenly you have the flexibility to take anything you dislike and create a solution for it. So that in my head is what makes it a masterpiece. The game gives you the option of fixing the things you feel are problems. That's what a good
Yeah.
sandbox
Yeah.
game should do, you know? Like, so I don't know why other people like it's like, you don't earn money from it. I've encountered the same vibe, and it's like, well, I'm not going into debt, and I'm getting. Well, I'm not. I mean, I am going into debt in other ways, but my point was that I'm
Yeah.
not going into debt paying for game design education. In some cases, I'm earning some money from it. I earn like a third of my
Right.
cost of living from YouTube and selling Valheim servers and getting affiliate commission and Patreon. So like I don't really understand why more people don't value the game design element. Why do you think that is? Because I mean, maybe it's different from your perspective because you're involved with modding, and the modding scene in general is more about game design. But even then, a lot of the modders don't give a shit about game design. They're just like, I want to make this cool thing. I don't care what the consequences are for the gameplay loop. I just want to make the cool thing. You know what I mean? So it's like,
So in certain cases, um, you have. I basically would break modders down into um kind of three categories. You have the world builders who want to take something and sometimes they want to make something new, an entire world, and make it detailed and beautiful, and the story and lore and backstory and blah blah blah. And other times you kind of just have um, uh, let me put it like this: like you have three different god variations, right? You have Odin, the All Father, who has to deal with everything else going on. You have, Thor, the guy who has to be noble but also strong, and so that would be a modder who makes like a good addition mod, maybe somebody like Jer. And then you have people like I don't know if you know the modder Shawsome. He kind of just makes whatever the hell he wants to make. Sure. Does he make 40K Warhammer mods? Yes, he does. Does he make wagons that turn into cars and jets? And yes, he does. But also, like everything has a place.
he's very
Everything
passionate.
because it's like, Valheim doesn't need fighter jets, but also Valheim didn't necessarily have flying vehicles before Shawsome decided to try to make flying jets. So to many people, and I would argue most modders are not looking at it as an experience. They're looking at it as a outlet, right? They don't want to
Yeah, that's a good way
experience
to put it.
modding. They want to create something. They want to get whatever is in their head out. Even if it's silly. Oh my God, My Little Pony doesn't belong in Valheim. Let them create My Little Pony in Valheim. And so it's one of those things where it's like, you know, sometimes people are just creative and they want to create. And sometimes that creation is absolutely chaos. And in other times, you have people who they fall in love with the idea of a world, and it's not because they, in most cases, it's not because they believe that they can do something superior to the developers, the original creators. It's because they believe that they can retell a story and expand upon it, and tell something, you know, much more with less holes in it, right? They want to patch the holes that they can see in the world. Um, it just, you know what I mean? Like you have different kinds of creation gods,
Yeah, it's like
and that
your
ends up,
response.
yeah,
That's basically what Enigma Mode is. Me changing what the community shows me might be possible to change and testing things, but ultimately it starts as like what happens in Valheim, what are the problems, and how can we redesign the gameplay loops to make Valheim not get in its own way so much. But
yeah,
in like from I understand what you're saying because basically to each modder, to each person, that output is going to be different. And like for some people, the best thing Valheim can be for them is to teach them about, programming by them making a bunch of ballistic missiles and launch silos in Valheim and these things. And like Dakar,
yep,
for example, he only makes really futuristic tech stuff to the point where like people will think it's a Dakar build if it is that vibe. He's very known for that. So it's like you really can just do it however you want. But that's kind of what I think ends up being frustrating for people. And I want to tie everything we've been talking about together. And I'm glad I've been able to talk with you. It's I feel
yeah,
like I've learned a lot from this discussion. So thank you for coming. But basically, I kind of have the impression now that nobody's really at fault or to blame, but ultimately the circumstance that produced Valheim produced so many people aware of Valheim that ultimately Irongate just didn't develop Valheim fast enough, and everyone or most people develop a frustration or a resentment or then an acceptance of these things, but it's a process of being a Valheim enthusiast, so to speak, right? You have to accept that, you know, Iron Gate is the way they are. Um, and so I think maybe a lot of the conflict and a lot of these other things and a lot of the reasons that Iron Gate doesn't have as close of a relationship with the community, it can all kind of boil down to this overwhelming that they experienced from the pandemic. Because once that happened, it kind of put everything in place where there were more players than there was ability to deal with it and reason with it. And if I
yeah,
look back and I think about it, they definitely like at least from my perspective back then, they were handling it right because they were targeting the things that caused the most problems, which was people losing their tombstones. That was a big issue back then. It was a big problem, and they addressed it, and they made it damn certain to the point where, like, sometimes I try and move around tombstones, and they go back to where they were before, and I'm like, God damn, these things are
yeah,
sticky, And it's like they did it really well. And there's other things that they did really well. The terrain used to be laggy. The terrain is not laggy anymore. It's like irrelevant. It really doesn't matter that much unless you do really extreme terrain changes. I know this because I've carved location proxies through the tallest mountains in the game, and I
yep,
understand that
yep,
you do eventually reach an int limit. You reach the 65,000 character limit, whatever it is, but the game still runs. It's all right. It's not that bad. And so, what I'm just getting at is that, like, back then it seemed like they were more able to see the problems people were having, but then something kind of changed, and then they kept working on things that are things that, yeah, are in the game, but they aren't really the things that are stopping people from playing the game. You know what I mean? And it's like the more time
yeah.
passed, the bigger that separation became. What do you think about that sentiment?
So, this is something that I was stressing to my development team, is that sometimes you want to do something and the publisher says no. And especially if you're in, and again, I don't know any of the financial story behind Valheim. Like I literally joined the community like a year and a half ago. You know what I mean? So for me, it was like at the time, everybody was complaining about not hearing anything. Everybody was complaining about like they hadn't heard anything from, Iron Gate for X number of months or whatever. They would see, like they didn't even see um like a response in the Discord from developers. So to me, it was kind of just like the developers had pretty much like walked off. And a lot of people felt like that. But to them, maybe it was, technically they have a publisher who is, maybe a part owner in this. Maybe the publisher said no. Or maybe everything was fine because they had a publisher.
Out of their control.
Yeah, maybe it was, and who knows, you know what I mean? Like maybe the publisher was kind of fine working with this tiny little indie developer, and then COVID happened. And then the publisher got really, really rich, and they were like, okay, now that we've made our money, we can tell you to fuck off because we don't care anymore. Who knows what actually happened behind the scenes. I will hope that, one day we learn what actually happened. But my general assumption is generally like the publisher at some point was like, hey, if you talk about this anymore, like it's just going to cause problems. If you continue to respond to this, it's going to cause problems. And then on top of that, you have to realize, entitled players and rude players and people who say, who threaten you and stuff like that. Like all of that is super scary for just the average person. And especially during COVID, when, all of a sudden people were like, I'll kill you, I'll kill you, I'll kill you, literally everywhere on the internet. You have this influx of community who seems like a good thing. And then all of a sudden they're arguing about politics and they're arguing about religion and this and that. And you're a game studio. You know what I mean? Like
subversion is.
Yeah. Even if you want to let people speak your minds, now you have to look like the bad guy because you're like, hey, this is causing problems. Now we have to ban this topic. Oh, so you're this, that, and the third, and blah blah blah. You're an ism or you're an ist or whatever, and it just becomes incredibly mentally taxing. Even if you have the best of intentions, even if the people in the community have the best intentions, it becomes so taxing to everybody. And honestly, I think until the game is stable, the game has no more really big updates coming, like the Deep North, you won't see another consistent growth cycle because people are kind of burnt out, right? They don't want to, they want to play through the game. Let's think about Minecraft, right? It would be like telling somebody, hey, you can play in the meadows. Let's just think about Valheim. Hey, you can play in the meadows. Next year, that's right, next year you can play in the Black Forest. And the year after that, the swamps. People get sick of that. They don't care about the game anymore. They don't want to start a new game world just to play through two biomes. They don't want to start a new game.
The game's designed so you go through the biome. So if one isn't there,
right,
the linear path has a missing step. So it makes sense.
But I mean, even if you were to think back, like to certain, like let's say Valheim was developed biome by biome. Eventually, even the most diehard fans of Valheim get annoyed and they get super sick of the fact that they can't just play the complete game. They have bought into the hype, and because they bought into the hype is gone. Their love for the game has slowly started to wane. It's like somebody, how would I describe this? It's like somebody coming over to your house, somebody you love coming over to your house, but they only show up once a month. eventually that visit, even if you truly love them, that visit stops being exciting. It stops being fun to the average person, right? You grow up with auntie or uncle coming over to your house once a month. Eventually, you start to expect it. Eventually, and it's even worse when you don't know, right? We don't know when the next update is going to come. It would be completely different if it was like tweak this, patch that, tweak this, patch that, you know, because at least you would see some visual change. Oh, this is causing too many issues. Let's tweak this a little bit. Oh, the giants are, sending people to the moon. Let's tweak the physics or whatever. But instead what you see is you can look through the history of the Discord and the communications and the YouTube videos, and you can see a more active developer community. And as a new player, you're like, oh yeah, that seems fun. That seems fine. You get to absorb everything that everybody has been waiting on, but everybody's been waiting. The vast majority of the community has been waiting. They're tired of waiting. They don't want to wait anymore. They just want to play the complete game. They want a stable system to play on, even if it's 30 FPS, as is. They just want to sit there and play the complete game. And because they can't, they play through the meadows, they play through the Black Forest, they play through the swamps, they play through the mountains, they play through all the way up to the Ashlands, and then they get to the Ashlands and they're like, well, this is pretty difficult. This doesn't seem like a very good difficulty curve. Man, this just got super difficult. Are they going to do the same thing with the Deep North? Are they going to make it even more difficult than the Ashlands? Well, that doesn't seem very fun, but to me, as a player, I can go from the meadows to the mountains pretty easily, and I can't go too deep in the mountains, but as a player, just a normal fresh spawn player, I can go into the mountains. You know what I mean? I can go into the swamps, I can go into the Black Forest, I can go into the meadows.
Linearity a little bit if you're motivated.
Right. And it's one of those things where it's like, but you have to go to the Mistlands in order to prepare for the Ashlands. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to realize people are more frustrated with difficulty progression spikes than they are about waiting. But they hate waiting more when they have to be frustrated about something else.
Yeah, it makes them more aware of it. It's like a magnifying glass. They notice the problem more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's when the Ashlands dropped, I was in Glad's stream, and he's another streamer, friends with Gathalion, and we were all excited for the Ashlands drop. And I was like prepped, I was ready, I was like, let's go, I'm ready for the new MMO drop. And Glad pops in the admin chat on Gathalion's Discord, and he was like, don't play Valheim. Don't play Valheim, which is insanely wild because these are two giant content creators who love the game. And before they had started balancing things in the Ashlands, Glad literally walks in there and he's like, listen, he was like, I know you guys are excited about this. Genuinely don't do it right now. Because it is one of the most frustrating things as a solo player. And I don't know if you've ever seen any of his content, but it was genuinely, it was insane. His clips, he was getting clipped and cut and whatever. All of his YouTube videos, his streams, and were just distributed everywhere. They were all over TikTok. They were all over Facebook and Reddit. And people were like, how the hell is this possible? How is this beatable? How is this, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's Valheim, right? So you have the Mistlands, which isn't necessarily more difficult. It's just harder terrain to navigate, which can be frustrating, but it's not hard. And then you go to the Ashlands, and it's just why the hell is everything so difficult? I can see everything coming, but that sniper, that archer just shot me, the charred bowman or whatever the hell they're called, just shot me from across the map. And then at the same time, I have to deal with these Morgans who are super difficult. But it's not like the progression itself is necessarily leading anywhere. Like you're not going to fight the final fight in the deep north and probably like Odin shows up and he's like, okay, and now you get to play the real game and then you get to go in like creative mode or you know what I mean? Like the
Yeah,
gameplay
like
loop
a new
itself
game plus.
is right, is very linear. And because it's linear, it gives people a certain love for the game that's easy to understand, but also at the same time, every time you hit a stumble, you start to notice. And every time you start to notice, you start to become disillusioned with the game. And when you start to become disillusioned with the game, you stop wanting to play it. So I think what the vast majority of the community needs to do is, and maybe what a lot of them are already doing, is they're waiting for the 1.0 drop. They're waiting for the full game. They're waiting for the game developers to say, hey, for the most part, we're done with everything. Because then, and only then, can the community start to coalesce around core ideas. I think one
Yeah,
of
it's
the
like once there's a stable ground.
yeah,
Makes sense, you know.
because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Are they with the deep introduction of the deep north? Are they going to nuke the Ashlands and make the deep north the final worst hell on earth to play through, or are they going to actually try and balance everything out? You don't know.
We'll find out eventually. So it was wonderful
Eventually,
chatting,
20,
Atlas.
2039.
I need to start ending the stream, but before I do, is there anything you want to tell people, specifically if they want to learn more about what you're working on, and where can I direct them? I've been showing your YouTube channel from time
YouTube
to
channel.
time.
Yeah, YouTube channel.
Okay.
That's fine. Yep.
So
Um,
for those of you listening, before he goes on, you can go to the top of the description because you're probably watching the VOD later on YouTube, and the link to his YouTube channel is right there. So just check it out. Go on.
yeah, for anybody who's curious, I have a lot of variety content. Sometimes I post memes in my shorts. I have a philosophy series that kind of helps you structure the mind. It's helped me structure the mind. So if you're there, you know, I have a Minecraft series. I talk about mods, which is the vast majority of my content. I cover and review mods. But yeah, if you're on my YouTube, you'll find, you know, everything you would need to know to link up with me elsewhere. So I'll recommend YouTube as my, you know, self promotion there. But yeah, it's been fun. It's so funny because I was just like, I don't think I've ever done an interview style thing before, and I've been invited on quite a lot of shows in my, you know, in my multiple aged years. But
Yeah, you did
yeah,
well. You
it's
have
actually
passion.
been it's been a lot of fun.
One of the reasons I like doing these is because I found that both for myself and for the others, it like, at least for me, it helps me feel. I know I talk about things that are wrong with Valheim and these things, but it, for the most part, is much more of an uplifting process where like I get more connected with these other people who like have been impacted by Valheim in some way. And for me that's really uplifting, and I find that oftentimes like I may not be as interested in something in Valheim, or maybe I feel a little subdued about it, but after having one of these discussions and talking with someone else who just like really loves the game and like loves making things, I just want to work on it. So it, like for me it's a way to help stay inspired during a time where most creators burn out and grow resentful of Valheim. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So,
connection with the community to the connection of what you love generally gives you more reason to love what you love.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And there's something about like it's easy to feel like things aren't real sometimes, and so when you talk to
Yeah.
another person, it like reinforces some of those concepts or whatever they are, and then for me at least it really helps give me more framework, and I there's ideas and things that happen while it's going on. So Yeah, it's good stuff. Now, before I
Yeah.
end, is there anything you want to tell the others aside from that?
Nope, it's been fun. Check out my YouTube if you guys are interested. Otherwise, no harm, no foul. Um, Hopefully, I'm hoping that I will have more news, and if I have any news about the MMO, I'll make sure that it's on, as many creators' channels as I can get it on, whenever that's all ready to go. But unfortunately, I don't have any news right now. So, um, but yeah, it was really really fun. I I literally I was thinking earlier. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be a little late on my video today, and then I'm sitting here and I'm looking at like just like how much we've covered and talked about, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I did my video for the day. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to whenever I do these calls, I've learned to just like let it kind of go as long as like I can and also as long as the other person has it available. Um, and then afterwards I just like it's best to get off the computer, go do something else, and then like helps feel less overstimulated. You know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
right,
It,
everybody.
it it's been a lot of fun, man.
That's awesome. Well, feel free to reach out if you ever want to like share something you're working on. Like I do
Yeah, yeah,
these, I do a live stream twice a week, and basically it's a development live stream unless I have something else slotted. Makes sense? So if you ever want to just talk about something related to Valheim, let me know. In this video, it was mostly just to get to know you and learn about your story. I didn't even know how to like talk about the live stream and index it and title it and everything. So now,
yeah,
next time I can be a bit more purposeful with that.
yeah. It's been fun, man. I'll jump off here and let you end the stream now.
All right, have a good one. I'll see you around,
Yeah,
okay?
man. You too.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching, everyone. And remember to check out Atlas's YouTube channel if you want to keep up with them. He actually is quite active on YouTube, like very active. And he's been making videos for a long time. So it's definitely the kind of individual you can check up on pretty easily. He's not unactive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. If there's anyone you want me to talk to, then comment below. Or tell them to reach out to me. Sometimes that works better. Usually these interviews and calls work best if the other person feels inspired to join and is looking forward to it. I try not to pressure people too much, and if I have to ask them more than once or twice, I just kind of back off. So there you go. Best of luck, everyone.